Oh, you know what I love?
Sports.
Love sports.
Sports.
When it comes to Texas A&M.
Where are you getting this information?
Let me tell you.
Welcome to TexAgs.
I need to talk a little sports with you, Ags. David Brauninger here with TexAgs Radio. Billy Lucci here on TexAgs Radio. Olin Buchanan.
We will develop men, we will graduate players, and we will win championships on the field.
The best way for us to win is to do it together.
Do you realize everybody knows who you are right now?
Very thankful, 12th man. They've won us games.
Been in college baseball for a while now, but I've never experienced anything like 12th man.
That's about as pretty a throw-catch combo as there is.
I saw the safety roll, the slot fade. I knew where I needed to put the ball.
Our skill set worked great together. Like, he was more speed and I was more power, and then we put together, it was like thunder and lightning, you know.
You know, if I'm betting on anybody, it's the Aggies.
Welcome into a very special Friday edition of TexAgs Radio presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We are inside the Rollo Insurance Studio. This is the Go Hour presented by The Warehouse at CC Creations, or as Richard Zane is going to call it because who's hosting, the Goober Hour. I am Luke Evangelist alongside Matthew Dawson, and it's a true summer show today. No David, no OB, no Billy. We will have Brawny, thankfully, and Nick Savage and Callie Garner, but you're stuck with the youngsters today. Like I said, Luke and Matthew taking over today. Matthew, why don't you tell everyone, one, just how excited we are to be here, and two, what we have planned for a great show today.
I mean, we're pretty locked in right now. I mean, I think I told Nick this morning, I mean, I'm locked in. That's it. That's all you got to say. But there's a lot of no's. Hey, no David, no OB, just like you said, but good. Good. Brady Montgomery got hurt. Good. Next man up. That's what we got. Come on.
And what do we have for the show today?
Well, we got Big 12 football, we got ACC football, and we got Big 10 football talking today because we got SEC Media Days with next week. So we're going to be talking about a ton of SEC next week. So we thought, hey, let's get the other conferences a little bit of love, especially in this year with the 12-team playoff. Other conferences, all of a sudden, you're going to start paying attention to them because these other teams are going to start, competing for college football playoff spots, over a team like A&M or any other team in the SEC. So we think that that's very relevant. Of course, we're going to have Ryan Brauninger on the show in the 10 o'clock hour. And we're going to be talking about some video games.
Yeah.
Yep, believe it or not, we're going to be talking about EA College Football 25. We got a lot to talk about there, but yeah.
Yeah, we figured because, no offense to David and OB, but we think their kids probably know a lot more about EA College Football than they would, so I don't think they would bring it up. So that's why we want to talk about it today. We're going to be going over some rankings, team rankings, player rankings, who we think is overrated, underrated. Most of A&M's team rankings have not been announced for their players, so we're going to kind of guess on those and give some reasoning behind who we think should be rated what. We're also going to break down, hopefully, what we want to see in gameplay, what some memories we have from playing the old games, and then also, it's just a fun time to be a college football fan. Someone like Matthew Dawson, who knows a lot about college football, I know he just cannot wait to get his hands on a game like that because he is the only person I know that will constantly name MAC players, Conference USA players. You give him a game like that, and his ball knowledge is just going to be unlimited now.
Well, I think it's just more in the fact that I think other people are going to start knowing these players. Like, when they're playing with these teams and trying to rebuild these teams, like in the dynasty mode, like, people are going to understand, like, people are going to be like, oh, Harold Fannin Jr., tight end at Bowling Green. Like, that's going to be like a thing that people who are like traditionally casual fans that wouldn't otherwise know unless they're watching Tuesday Night MAC football, right? They're going to like know these names, and man, I'm excited to see Twitter. I'm excited to just have conversations with people. Like, it's just going to be, I think it's just going to grow the game. I really do. I think we were missing that for a number of years, and like, I'm sure there's some people here that have never played the video game before, and that's okay, but I do think something like that has a chance to really grow the game, especially in the younger audience.
Absolutely. And before we get to the video game talk, we've got actual sports to talk about. So we're going to throw it around the room super quick, super early, because we got a lot of things we want to talk about, and we want Nick and Callie's input on those topics. So first, we're going to go behind the glass and check in with Nick Savage. Nick, what is on your mind today?
Well, what's on my mind is SEC Media Days because, like y'all said, we're locked in. We're waiting for that to come up. A super busy week, but what's on my mind is, man, this show's just going to be fantastic with you two hosting it for the first time. We've already gotten a Matthew Dawson obscure football player reference. Love it. we haven't gotten a Luke Evangelist giggle yet. That's what I'm really banking on. And yeah, I know we got Brawny later. That'll be fun to hear what he's got to say, break down some new transfers, and yeah, just excited to see where y'all go today.
Now, I know Richard is back there, and having been in that director chair for a couple of days, I know your life might be in danger because he has been known to be very violent these last couple of days, throwing things. I just want to know if you're okay.
He has not thrown anything at me yet. If he does, we're roommates. We're going to be roommates up in Dallas. So, I mean, we got along in Nashville when we went last year, and me and Richard, man, we're good friends. So
it's good to know that Richard actually does care about some people in this office.
Yeah, exactly.
That's perfect. We're going to go now to the Angry Elephant News and Social Center. Aggies gather at the Angry Elephant. Callie Garner is there. She's very awesome for helping us. She's coming off the IR to help us today and be our social center person. So, Callie, what news and text messages do you have for us?
Well, good morning, boys. First of all, I feel like it's been a revolving door of hosts this week, but we're very excited to be here with you guys and excited to be a part of y'all's show today. I wanted to touch on the Media Day schedule really fast. Mike Elko and the Aggies will speak to the media on Thursday of this next week. And we have 3 players going: Shamar Turner, Torian York, and Trey Zune. And Torian York is a sophomore who is attending Media Day, so that's really awesome for him to get that experience. And we're just excited to hear what they have to say for us. But huge news, along with the video game sports, your Texas A&M Aggies are the esports 2024 Collegiate Valorant National Champions, and they won the title yesterday afternoon. And there were 384 teams across the country, 32 qualified for the championships, and your A&M Aggies took the whole thing home.
That is incredible. Before we go any further, has anyone ever played Valorant before?
I have no idea what that
I've
no,
played
dude.
Before.
Okay,
it's
that's
kind of
what I
like
thought.
CS:GO.
And I'm willing to bet.
Of course.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's a little bit like CS:GO if anyone's played that. But I'm sure the people that are listening are like, "What the heck is this guy talking about?" but hey, the important part is esports.
Right. Didn't they win something earlier too? It just seems like A&M is taking off on all kinds of levels in the athletic department, and it's big when Hayden Schott is taking notice and when he's tweeting about it. And if you don't have notifications on for him, you're doing yourself a disservice. Hayden Schott tweeted esports school with the up arrow emoji 4 times. So clearly it's big if he sent it 4 times. Would love to hop on the sticks with any of you fine folks if it please you, ... It probably won't. Now, Hayden Schott can do a lot of things. He can hit. Sometimes he can't run, but that's okay. Do we think he's any good at Valorant, or has he even heard of Valorant?
Man, I don't know. Look, that's a guy. He can stick it, on the diamond, but can he get on the sticks? Is a completely different question, But I have a feeling that if he's talking his game, let's get him in there. I'd like to play a game with Hayden Schott. I'm sure he'd be a fine teammate. I see him in the dugout. I know he's a good teammate, but it'd be awesome.
Yeah, we'll see if that translates. The whole kicker of this entire situation is, according to @PogChew, which great username, by the way, the trophy that they were going to win actually costs $10,350, and the team has to pay for it themselves, which I think is unbelievable. Could you imagine being at the top of your game, training for years in a sport like playing Valorant, and you have to pay for the trophy after winning the national championship? That's just unbelievable to me. And if there's any way to help fundraise that, I'm sure we would be willing to promote that and help out with it. I have $10 I would donate. But I think it's crazy that, could you imagine winning the college football playoff or March Madness and they're like, oh, by the way, the school that wins it, we're going to send you a bill for like $50,000. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's kind of dumb. But alas, that's where we are.
Yeah, that's today's day and age of college sports. Well, congratulations to Texas A&M Esports on all your hard work on the sticks, all those late night training sessions while doing school as well. We're proud of y'all. Congratulations. My next question for you, Matthew, is would you rather win a national championship or a Flow Bowl championship? And could you give some background on what I'm talking about?
Well, what Luke's talking about is, part of the reason I'm here is because of Luke. Luke and I have been good friends for a while, and he was here before me. But we actually coached a Powerpuff team together, and it's called the Flow Bowl. And look, we took them to the ship, and we dominated. All right, then there was no holding back either. We were dialed in. We had playbooks. It was it was an awesome time.
Yeah, Matthew was the offensive coordinator and co-head coach, and I was the defensive coordinator. So this two-man group right here, we've been together for a while. So one of my favorite memories with Matthew is we got this little trophy for winning Flow Bowl, and it was supposed to be joint custody because we were the two head coaches. But to this day, I've not seen the trophy at all. Matthew's been keeping it
it's
from
still
me.
on my desk. Yeah, look, maybe I'll bring it to the office. Maybe we just post it up over there.
That would be perfect. Well, TexAgs needs some trophies because clearly, we're just carrying the whole shit around here.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah. My favorite memory from that was we were in the semifinals down at 7, and we scored to go down 1, and you could pick 1, 2, or 3 points for the extra point. And I was thinking, we should tie it up. And Matthew, what did you do?
We went for it, and we dubbed. Bless her heart, Erica was a monster. All right, so of course we had her one-on-one with a safety. It was over. It was over. Thank you, Nick. I hear him in the back.
The people in the back are going crazy. I mean, if you think Matthew knows college football, just wait until he's a future head coach one day. You just know it sitting next to him.
Powder puff. There it is.
Don't let
a lot of money to be made there.
That's going to be a future NFL coach right there. And speaking of coaching, I found this fun fact on Twitter from Kendall Rogers. Michael Early, Texas A&M's new head coach for Texas A&M baseball. Him and Rob Vaughn, who's Alabama's head coach for baseball, they used to play together. And Kendall Rogers posted something on Twitter last night. When Michael Early was hired, Rob Vaughn sent him a picture of a scorecard from Rob Vaughn's last game playing professional baseball. And Michael Early signed it, and his note to Rob Vaughn was, "Good luck, bro. Hope to coach against you one day." And I think it's awesome that that's coming to fruition for Michael Early.
Dude, I love full circle stories like that, man. Especially like in the SEC. I mean, in like the micro environment of the SEC that it is. The fact that you're having two coaches like that go against each other is just awesome. That's just awesome, man.
Yeah, and it's great to see, I know we're trying to ramp up the football coverage, but we're going to have Brauninger on to talk some MLB draft and kind of close the book on what a great season it was for Aggie baseball. But when you see a coach like Michael Early get hired, and it just seems like he's got friends all across the industry. He's got friends who are head coaches who want to come and be an assistant coach for him. He's got guys in the professional and college ranks that are vouching for him. It's really great to see.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%.
Yeah, now we're going to transition to a coach who may not have that. He's a bit of a controversial figure. We had to get in on some Deion Sanders talk with the new college football game coming out and with Big 12 Media Days coming out. Some things were said yesterday that we need to go ahead and address. We're going to be talking about some player rankings, but we got to hit it early. Deion Sanders, when talking about his son Shedeur and Travis Hunter's EA rankings, because of course, when you have the podium at college football at a media day for your conference, you want to hit the big topics like what kind of culture are you trying to build for your team? What are my players ranked in the new fictional video game? Of course, Deion is hitting the big topics. So he said, "I'm just trying to figure out how Shedeur can be tied with another person. How did that happen? And how can Travis not have the highest score on the game when he's arguably the best receiver and the best defensive back in college football?" So first of all, Matthew, can you just tell everyone where the 2-star players for a 4-8 football team are ranked in this new video game?
Yeah, I mean, Shedeur, he's 93 overall. He's also actually the best rated quarterback on the rankings. He's actually ranked above Carson Beck, who's also a 93. So, he's ranked number 1. And should he be ranked number 1? I don't look, there's arguments to be made against that for sure. But Travis Hunter's at 95, and the highest overall in the game is Will Johnson at 96. So it's like, why are we splitting hairs like this at media days? Like, do people, I guess some people care. I don't know. Like, I guess Deion thinks that people care. He cares, clearly. So,
yeah, I think for a fact someone like Mike Elko, I wouldn't even expect Lane Kiffin to stoop that low as to bring up college football rankings at media days. You would hope that that's a setting for you to promote your student athletes, promote your program. And I get that Deion's doing that, but it just comes across all wrong. Colorado is already overhyped as it is, and they're getting that love certainly in the new video game and in those rankings. I just don't think it's something you should be openly addressing and begging for or complaining about at media days. You only have a certain amount of time on that mic. I know for sure Coach Mike Elko is going to be talking about this A&M team, this A&M culture, the players who are speaking are going to represent that. And it's just refreshing to see that there are some teams around the country that don't exactly go about it in the right way, but you know that Texas A&M has someone at the helm that has leadership to do things the right way.
Yeah, well, speaking of overrated, I mean, Josh Pate, I believe, sat down. What was it? Basically, Arch Manning came out as like an 87 overall, who was like, that's going to be essentially a top 20 quarterback in college football. And I just don't know. OB would be screaming about this because every time I talk to that guy, I'm like, oh, this guy has potential. He's like, well, we haven't seen it yet. He's like, well, thing is, we haven't really seen it yet, and I mean, in this case, I think he's absolutely right. I mean, I don't know, and you see people coming out with these rankings, like Arch Manning being like a top so-and-so quarterback in the SEC, and it's like he's not even starting on his own team. I don't know. I mean, I just find that it's all in the wash, man. I mean, I don't know why people care that much about the rankings, but then again, here I am sitting here like, gosh, I can't believe he's ranked that high. And I'm like, I don't know, is this the national media view, or is this just like sort of a view from just EA's side, you think? I think it's a national view that I think people are kind of misled, I think. I think people are being misled a little bit.
Yeah, on the Arch Manning situation, if you were following, a couple months ago, players were opting in, and I believe the deal is you get a free copy of the game plus how much money? Like
$500, a couple $100.
Yeah, a couple $100 and a free copy of the game as, I guess, payment for being in the game and using your rights. So Arch Manning publicly came out and said that he was opting out of the game to focus on football. And now here we are just a couple months later, the game's about to release, and Arch is doing his own ad. He's got the highest rank. He's going to have a higher ranking than almost every quarterback in the country, and he has thrown 2 passes and has sat on the bench. And it's just, and I believe they paid him $60,000 for this sponsorship. So good on Arch for maximizing his value, his NIL, his potential to a brand. But it just seems asinine why you went from, oh, I'm opting out to focus on football, and then here you are, even closer to the season, coming out with an ad for the game with your dad. It's crazy.
Yeah, there's other true freshman quarterbacks, or true freshmen last year, true sophomores this year, that were in his class that have actually played meaningful downs that are going to be rated way lower than him and haven't gotten, the same kind of love. I mean, Dante Moore, he struggled at times, but man, that offensive line was brutal last year, right? Jalen Rayner for Arkansas State was a true freshman. He popped off there with Butch Jones. I mean, I don't know. We'll see what season has to hold with Arch Manning. I don't know, if they're going to change it based on whether or not he actually plays. But we'll see.
Yeah,
It'll be interesting to see how other rankings change as well, and A&M players specifically. You only got one player in the top 100, but how many are going to be there at the end of the season?
Yeah, dude, that is great foreshadowing right there. He just foreshadowed a topic we're going to hit in our next segment. But for right now, we're going to hit a break. If you want to text in, the number is 979-693-1150. In that next segment, we're going to get to a text message that is actually pretty well planted because it kind of leads into our next topic that Matthew also just hinted at. But for right now, we're going to hit a break. You're listening to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. great bumper music choice right there. Matthew's shaking his head already. He's jamming.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is like what our high school football coach, he would come in the locker room after a dub and we would just blast it. And he would just be like, I mean, do whatever he did. And we just all like went crazy. That favorite song of mine, for sure.
Absolutely. We're going crazy for TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We are inside the Rollo Insurance Studio, and this is the Go Hour, presented by The Warehouse at CC Creations. But again, we have commandeered the name, and we're calling it the Goober Hour for today because of who's hosting. We got a comment on the YouTube chat that said, "This is the episode we've been waiting for all week," from Noble Guy. And then he also said, "The prisoners have taken over the asylum," which is absolutely true.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we've taken over the asylum. I feel like we sometimes warden OB, you know, with, I mean, that guy, talk about asylum. I mean, it's just, so I feel like sometimes we're the wardens in the back, you know, like kind of, you know, in the background, you're making sure that the prisoners kind of don't get riled up. I mean, Richard's back there. We're not even watching him back there.
Right.
I hope
We
Nick's
need
got
eyes
under
on
control.
Richard for sure. Richard just screamed back there. Things are getting crazy. Like we alluded to in the last segment, Matthew kind of set it up on a tee right here, and we're going to hopefully knock it out of the park. But we got a text message saying, "Hey, Matt and Luke, last year, Torian York and Noah Thomas were a few guys that were breakout stars for us. Who are some fresh faces that we can look for this year to bust on the scene in the maroon and white?" That is Alex from Tomball, who just, y'all might be on the same wavelength here because that was a topic we were going to hit and relate it to EA college football. So Matthew, take it away first. Give me a breakout star for Texas A&M that not a lot of people are talking about.
I mean, if you want to look, I guess, in the defensive back room, like, I don't know who's going to start there, like what that full room is going to look like. But I guess a couple names that I really like, and especially like the way that secondary operated under Mike Elko, kind of bred some stars there for sure. I mean, I like what Marcus Radcliffe did a lot at San Diego State for sure. I like Donovan Sanders a lot. Will Lee, of course, at corner. I mean, any of those guys, you know, like if they end up stepping up, Jaden Hill, you know, if you like starts at nickel, like any of those guys could definitely step up and play a valuable role to this team. And if they are playing a valuable role to the team on a team that is a defense that looks really good and plays really good and really fast, I think you could see some ratings bump for sure. I think it's going to be reflective on like how the team's going to be doing down the season. So I think looking at like the top 100 players in college football, maybe one of those guys in the secondary kind of sneaks up there. Bryce Anderson, for example, who was insanely productive last year, not in the top 100. Maybe he's there by the end of the season as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. In terms of a new name, he's not necessarily new, but if you follow recruiting and you know what kind of high-profile athlete Ruben Owens was, I think a lot of A&M's productivity in the backfield is going to be a three-headed monster. You've got Amari Daniels, you have Le'Veon Moss, and Ruben Owens. There we go. The stats speak for itself. As a true freshman last year, Ruben Owens was highly productive. Obviously, when you're splitting carries with two other backs who are not only older than you and know the offense better than you, but they've also just, you know, I think Ruben, it takes some time sometimes for guys to catch up from the high school game to get used to college. But once you get carries, you're going to see him flourish. And I think A&M's backfield, I think it's going to be a lot of Le'Veon Moss on early downs. Ruben Owens can do it all out of the backfield as well. You saw that a couple times against Miami. You saw that against Auburn as well. But sometimes you wish he would get more involvement. So for me, I know people know who Ruben Owens is, but I would not be surprised if he became the star out of the backfield for Texas A&M this season.
I also think that the way that run game, if it's successful or not, right, this year, I think that's also going to be reflective on the offensive line as well. And I think your running back ratings and your offensive line ratings are kind of go up and down together. Yeah. So I think Trey Zune, right, is a guy that I think we've talked about. This show's talked about before as being, you know, definitely one of the better players in that offensive line. I think at tackle there, if you see that run game being really effective and Wigman stays clean in the pocket, I think that that's a guy that could also end up in the top 100. Because I was looking at some of the tackles in there, and there are some really, really good names. But I think that every year you see tackles just get picked higher and higher in the NFL draft just because of the value of the position. So you see tackles come out of nowhere, you know, all the time in the NFL draft. And I think Trey Zune could be a guy as well. Yeah,
we want to hear from y'all. Who is your one breakout star? If you had to pick one, a breakout star for Texas A&M football this year, make sure to text in 979-693-1150. We're going to go around the room now and hear from Nick and Callie. Who do y'all think, if you had to pick just one, is going to be a breakout star for A&M this year?
I'm kind of with you, Luke. Sorry, Callie, I didn't know what order we were going in, but I'm kind of with you. I don't know if, everyone's aware of who Le'Veon Moss is, but ever since, we've seen him get on campus here at A&M, I've always thought, man, that guy's going to be a feature back one day, and we've seen flashes throughout his time here. I think, like you mentioned, maybe underutilized at some points, but with Colin Klein coming in and a lot of different looks on offense now, I'm sure we'll get to see him a little bit more, and I'm excited to see what that is because I think he could be a 1,000-yard rusher. He runs mean. He runs angry. He's not afraid of the contact, and you love that out of a Texas A&M running back, right? That kind of is the attitude that this team likes to adopt. So if that's fair, Le'Veon, let me see. I'll think of a transfer. Come back to me on the transfer. I'll let Callie get in there.
Yeah, of course. Callie?
I think Luke kind of stole mine with Ruben Owens. I was really impressed with what he was able to do last year. But if we want to talk wide receiver room, I think we've got more than just a three-headed monster there. I know we mentioned Noah Thomas earlier. I think Micah Tease has a lot of potential coming in at that position and then transfer. You have Jahdae Walker. He was a really big breakout star last year, and I think he has a lot of potential to kind of continue that upward trajectory this year. But you have Moose. You've got a lot of players in the wide receiver room. I'm excited to see that room kind of come to fruition on the field this year.
Yeah, me too. I think people are sleeping on A&M's wide receiver room. I see a lot of commentary on Twitter about the talk is A&M's defense, and a lot of people are sleeping on A&M's offense as a whole, but especially that wide receiver room. We just had Stephen McGee on. We have a lot of people on, and Nick would ask, if you had to pick between wide receivers and running backs, who do you think will be more productive? And everyone so far has said running backs, and that's not a knock, I think, on the receivers. I think the running back room is exactly that talented and more. There's so much potential there, but the mix that A&M has of receivers, veteran guys who know the program, but also young breakout stars like Noah Thomas and Micah Tease. Who was it? Was it Connor who came in earlier, a couple days ago, or maybe it was a couple weeks ago, and he said, or Billy asked him if you had to pick one player that people are going to watch out for, people are going to know. Maybe it was Torian who said it, but they said Micah Tease, and so I think big things are ahead for him. And A&M's running back room has absolutely proven it. I think for the wide receiver room this year, it's going to be a prove-it year.
Yeah, well, let me throw Nick a bone here. What about Cyrus Allen? You're talking about transfers?
Yeah, well, actually, I came up. Thank you. I appreciate that. But how about Des Ricks in the secondary, right? A lot of those transfer guys are going to get looks, to get on the field this fall. And why not the former five-star Alabama transfer, right? I'm sure the reports, or I know the reports out of spring were good on him, but we'll see what it's like in the fall camp or in fall camp leading up to the start of the season. So why not? Why not a guy in the secondary?
Yeah, I like that pick. Again, like any of those guys in the secondary, I'm not sure that whoever starts week one is going to finish the season in that secondary completely in that spot. I'll throw Cyrus Allen out there like I did before. People are maybe questioning like, oh, what's he going to do at the Power 5 level? Well, did you watch him play in Nebraska last year? That dude torched him for 100 yards on 6 catches and a touchdown. And he was also a special teams player for them as well. So I think Cyrus Allen definitely is a guy that I don't think enough people are talking about for sure. Again, we keep saying this, like, oh, people are not talking about this person enough. There's a lot of new faces here, right, which is what you get when you have a new coach in any kind of program. But, man, I'm really excited to see it. I have a feeling that there will be multiple players that end up in the college football top 100. I'm just excited to see what it is. Because Edgerrin Cooper at the beginning of the season would not have been in the top 100, 1,000%. But he would have been in the top, clearly he was in the top 30. Like 45 because you picked 45th to the Packers, so he would have been a top 50 player for sure in that game. So it's all very interesting, man. It's all very interesting. I'm excited.
Me too. Matthew just alluded to it. We're going to quickly hit the top 100 players in EA College Football were released. Nick Scorton, the only Texas A&M player on it, 90 overall, 88th highest ranked player, 87 overall strength, 91 overall awareness, 82 overall speed, and 87 overall acceleration. We're going to talk about it later, but I just don't see 87 players in college football being better than Nick Scorton next year. A&M as a whole, I think, is being slept on, and Nick Scorton is another new face. I know everyone knows him because he was the big fish out of the transfer portal, but if you have never watched him play and you have never used him in a video game, you are in for a treat. He's a game breaker. He's a game wrecker. He's the 6th highest rated left end of the game. Top 15 for D-line and D-end. He's just a monster, and that shows in the video game. And hopefully some other A&M guys will start getting that same respect.
Yeah, I mean, there were 31 players, I believe, in the Big Ten that were in the top 100, 29 in the SEC. So, like, how do you lead the Big Ten in sacks? And, I mean, it's crazy to think that the Big Ten leader in sacks last year is being underrated.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. That's crazy. So,
Yeah,
I know
crazy.
it's a new scene, new conference, different schedule. But look, Purdue, in terms of that defense, like, they were very dependent on Nick Gordon getting to the quarterback in a ton of games. And there were some really good tackles, some tackles that are in the top 100, actually, that he had to go up against and dominated, man. So people, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, we talk about him a ton. I think national media does talk about him a lot, but I think people are really going to see, like, what this guy can do. I mean, like, because not everyone watched the spring game, right? Not everyone was there. Not everyone watched the Texas A&M spring game, but, I mean, that's just a sneak peek, right, of what you're going to get with Nick Gordon.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk to someone who knows Big Ten football like the back of his hand. And you might be seeing double with the Dawsons in the next 2 segments because we're going to have Matthew's brother Chris on to talk Big Ten football. He's a student at the University of Minnesota, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, Minnesota. So he knows Big Ten football. The Dawsons are big in the North. They know the Big Ten like the back of their hand. Matthew, and we were talking about running angry. Ruben Owens runs like Matthew Dawson when you tell him Big Ten football doesn't matter. So,
I mean, it does matter. Well, now it matters with the 12-team playoff. So, I'll just say that.
Yeah, we're going to be talking more Big Ten football on the other side of the break. You're listening to TexAgs Radio presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. I'm laughing because Matthew's doing the air guitar. Incredible music once again, just absolutely electric. Welcome back into TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We are inside the Rollo Insurance Studio. This is the Go Hour, presented by The Warehouse at CC Creations. Maroon never looked so good with Maroon U. Before we get to Big Ten football, we're going to throw it out to the Angry Elephant News and Social Center for Callie Garner to read a text message.
Yeah, we had a texter bring to our attention that when we were talking about Arch's production from last year, we didn't mention Marcel Reed's name, who probably had the best bowl game out of any freshman, which is a true fact. So,
So do we have 3 quarterbacks on this roster that are better than Arch Manning?
Oh,
that are more proven? I mean, I just said that, so it's probably true.
Quote, I just said that, it's probably true. Let's see if your brother, Chris Dawson, has any hot takes or quotes that he wants to come up with. We're going to head out to the Boss Firearms hotline. Boss Firearms, your local experts. They buy used guns, ammo, and accessories. Go to bossfirearms.com to start earning money like a boss today. That is where we will find none other than Mr. Chris Dawson, the co-host of the Redshirt Sophomore Podcast. Matthew, what is the slogan?
We never sit out.
And that is true. They never sit out. Chris, how you doing today?
Good. Thank you guys for having me. I love what TexAgs does as a program, and then I'm excited to come on and talk Big Ten football with you guys.
Absolutely. Well, we're incredibly excited to have you. Let's go ahead and kick it over to your brother, who you know so well, Matthew, for the first question.
Well, I know Luke is excited about this because, this guy's a Michigan fan, believe it or not. So he's definitely excited to talk about Big Ten football. I'm sure he's going to ask you about that program up there. But in terms of realignment, right? And, you're a fan of a school like Minnesota, so I think it affects every school differently. Like, what does this realignment look like and do for the landscape of the Big Ten, in terms of recruiting, in terms of actual competition? There's no more divisions either, right? So I think a lot of that, you used to be able to count on, like, one team's coming out of the East, right? And then it was whoever in the West. It feels like it's some of these other teams might have a chance to really get up there.
I will say, and speaking for Minnesota and maybe the bottom half of the Big Ten, I do think it causes a little bit of anxiety. They won't say it, but I think it does in terms of you're bringing in 4 programs that probably slot themselves anywhere from 8 to 2 in the Big Ten. Obviously, with Oregon and USC up towards the top half there, but nationally, it definitely increases recruiting. Your landscape to touch out west. We've already seen that come to fruition in these classes, hitting out Arizona, New Mexico, California, and even down into Texas. And then,
Yeah, absolutely. When you look at the Big Ten as a whole, you bring in 4 new teams. We had a topic yesterday about which team that's new to a conference has the best chance to win it, and Oregon was a popular pick coming into the Big Ten. When you look at the Big Ten as a whole, what is going to be the storyline this year, and what are the storylines heading into the year? Is it more conference realignment, or is it more the traditional powers, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State?
I definitely think it's both, right? In terms of these new teams coming in, where they're going to slot in, but also you've got some legit college football playoff contenders. Obviously, Michigan won last year. Ohio State's been a regular. Oregon looks to jump in and make that next step to make the college football playoff with the talent that they're bringing in. Obviously, they're just firing on all cylinders on recruiting-wise and then transfer portal and whatnot. And, yeah.
So let me ask you this as well. So when you look at conference realignment, people like to talk about travel, especially when it comes to the ACC and the Big Ten, right? You get, over there in Minneapolis, right? It's a pretty central location. I would say Lincoln, Nebraska is a pretty central location. So, maybe travel isn't as bad as some of these other teams. But, you got teams from California flying to Rutgers, New Jersey, flying over to California. What are some of these travel situations going to look like for some of these teams?
It is brutal. And it's, middle of the season, right? They didn't do anyone any favors necessarily with some bye weeks, try to help with that travel time. I think it's going to be a learning process for everyone, not just in the Big Ten, but also you look at the ACC, going to go cross-country, Big 12 as well. It's just the reality of college football nowadays, and unfortunately, the burden is just passed upon to these student-athletes and these coaches who are just expected to just figure it out, and they're also going through classes, and they're students themselves as well. And I think I would say, though, it is cool, though, in terms of, from a fan perspective, I guess, outside looking in, you're going to get to go to cool stadiums and see your teams play. Like Minnesota gets to go to the Rose Bowl this year and play UCLA. That's very, very exciting and whatnot. And I didn't think it helps in that sense as well.
When you look at the scheduling that you just mentioned, Minnesota getting to go to a new stadium, it's obviously very exciting from a fan perspective, but from a team perspective, You're looking at a completely new college football playoff format. You get the one auto bid from the Big Ten, but if Matthew were to set the line at 2.5 right now for Big Ten teams to make the playoff, would you take the over or under right now? I know it's tough to say with so many new teams, so many new environments, but if you had to pick right now, would you take over or under 2.5?
I would take over. I just think there's going to be at least 3 teams, in that top 8 to 10, whatever it may be, depending on how many at-large bids there are. I think Penn State, obviously Ohio State and Oregon are 2, heavy favorites. You guys mentioned those 2. But Penn State, I think, is a team that's definitely benefiting from, getting out of the shadow of the Big Ten East that was, Ohio State and Michigan the past couple of years. And then also moving away from the 14 playoff, but also the 12-team playoff, which they'd be a team that would have made it a bunch of times these past couple of years. And they've got some really, really good talent in that junior core from 2022 class as well. And then I'll throw in Michigan. Obviously, I know, Luke, you're a Michigan guy as well. Hopefully that brings a smile to your face. But, even though they lose all those guys, I do think the talent is there. The culture is there for them to figure it out and get back to the college football playoff.
Well, let me ask you this. The identity of the Big Ten, I think, is kind of unique, especially right now. And, every conference changes year to year. But in the Big Ten, right, there's been a significant offensive struggle in the bottom half. I'll tell you, 9 teams from the Big Ten last year finished outside the top 70 in offensive points per game. That's nuts. That's like well over half the conference. And that doesn't include UCLA, who's coming in. However, you do kind of get injected with Oregon, USC, and Washington, some historically pretty decent offensive teams. But the longest tenured offensive coordinator in the Big Ten, Christopher, I don't know if you knew this, Barry Lunny Jr. at Illinois. And he was hired 2 years ago, right? So, there's a significant problem with offense in the Big Ten. Do you think the culture of the Big Ten and, this ground and pound, especially with the weather up there in the Midwest, do you think that has any chance of changing in the next couple of years with the addition of these teams?
Certainly, but I do think there's going to be a little bit of adaptation, and you're already seeing it with Oregon, who's, yes, they bring in Dylan Gabriel, Evan Stewart, all these other playmakers outside, but they're building from the inside out, and that's still how you're going to win college football, and that's still how you're going to win the Big Ten. We saw Michigan have that blueprint the past couple of years. Ohio State's trying to implement that as well defensively with Jim Knowles and what they're doing there, and even Will Howard and Chip Kelly coming in and ground and pound game. We'll see, though. I do think it's an interesting conversation that we're going to be having in September and October, right, when the weather's maybe a little bit better, but then you get into November, these conference games, the slate starts shaping up for the conference race, and we'll see who wins. It'll be awesome.
Nick just put the win total projection graphic up. Are there any teams who, are set to underachieve or overachieve? Teams who, you look at that line and you just, I like their schedule a little bit more than what they're getting credit for. I think I might go over. Or a team maybe like Penn State or Michigan who has a little bit of a tougher schedule, who you might see struggle with those win totals.
I'll actually say, in terms of how I'm feeling about them, I'll take Penn State to overachieve, right? I think even though 9.5, I feel pretty good about what they're bringing back. I love what they did coaching-wise. Yes, you lose Manny Diaz to Duke as part of the domino of Texas A&M, but you bring in Tom Allen, right, former head coach of Indiana, who had a big effect in that defense and what they did the last couple of years. And then Andy Kotelnicki, from Kansas comes in, hoping to inject some explosiveness into that running game that they've been lacking against teams like Ohio State and Michigan. And we'll see how Drew Allard does, but I still feel pretty good about what they're doing and what they return defensively. A guy like Abdul Carter, right, freaky edge linebacker for them. Danny Dennis Dutton as well. On the interior, Zane Durant. Those are all guys in that junior class that they had that was a top 10, top 5 class in that cycle. One other team I'll give you in terms of overachieving is Rutgers. I just love their schedule. I was a guy that was tying them last year. Thought they'd go over their win total. I think this year they have the easiest schedule by far within the Big Ten. They are the only team that misses, those top 4 teams with Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan. None of them are on their schedule. And the reality of the Big Ten is right now, especially in 2024, is if you're in that middle of the pack there, every single game is winnable, and that's also losable as well. But I do think what they bring back returning wise, and then you're bringing Nathan Kaliakmanis over to reunite with Kirk Soraka. We'll see how that works. But with defense and running game, you can win a lot of games in this league, especially in that middle of the pack. We've seen that in the Big Ten West the past couple of years now. I think Rutgers is definitely a team that could, overachieve this year and win more games than people are expecting them to.
Yeah, we completely agree. We're both high on Rutgers for their schedule. Keep it right here. We're going to keep talking some Big Ten football with Chris Dawson. You're listening to TexAgs Radio presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Welcome back into TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We are wrapping up the Go Hour in the Rollo Insurance Studio. We're still on with the Big Ten football expert, Chris Dawson, co-host of the Redshirt Sophomore. Chris, we wanted to ask you just a couple more questions before we head out. We've got a lot of first-year head coaches in the Big Ten. You've got Kurt Cignetti at Indiana, Sharon Moore stepping up at Michigan, Jonathan Smith, Michigan State, Deshaun Foster, UCLA, and Jed Fish at Washington. Who is your pick to have the best season out of those first-year head coaches?
Well, in terms of like expectation, I think in terms of win total, I mean, you're probably looking at Michigan, right? And they're probably going to win more games just because of the reality of the situation that he's taken over for them. But in terms of taking a step and building their program in the right direction, I look at Jonathan Smith and Michigan State. I really like what they did in the transfer portal. I really like what they did in their coaching staff. They bring a lot of those guys over from Oregon State who had a lot of success there in the later years of the Pac-12. And the talent is actually kind of there in Michigan and Ohio State as well. And also the buy-in there from, the program and the boosters and the NIL department there. All bodes well for Jonathan Smith in year one and beyond.
Well, let me ask you this real quick. We only got a couple minutes here, but I do want to get, who is your pick to win the conference? And do you have a dark horse? I know there's only a couple teams that can actually win it in the Big Ten, but do you have a dark horse for who can make the Big Ten championship and a winner?
I love Ohio State right now. The only question is their O-line and maybe quarterback, but I do think Will Howard is very serviceable enough to win the Big Ten and what they do defensively. The transfers they brought in, Caleb Downs, obviously, but their D-line that they return with Jack Sawyer and JTT and others is really, really exciting, as well as the two-headed monster in the backfield, Trayvon Henderson, Quinshot Judkins. And obviously, we'll see. I'm excited to see, five-star wide receiver Jeremiah Smith coming in. I know a lot of hype is around him nationally as well. And then in terms of a team that's a dark horse, I know everyone says it, or at least, in the Big Ten circles, right? Nebraska gets a lot of hype every offseason. But I do think that what they've done with Matt Rule is really different structurally than what they did with previous staffs there. And I do think, the only hole I see on their roster right now is quarterback. And I think you're bringing in a guy like Dylan Raiola. We'll see how he adjusts to Big Ten football. In his freshman season, a lot of expectation put on the five-star freshman from Buford. But I think their O-line is tremendous. I think the receivers that they're bringing in the portal with Isaiah Nayer and Jamal Banks Nayer's from Texas and Banks is from Wake Forest are really exciting to pair with a true sophomore, really talented guy, Malachi Coleman, as well as Tony White's led defense that is really, really good.
Absolutely.
And can do a lot of things.
Absolutely. We completely agree. Thank you so much for joining us, Chris. That is Chris Dawson from the Redshirt Sophomore on the Boss Firearms Hotline. We're going to be back talking ACC and Big 12 football with our guy, Jason Piacelli from ROC Boys Football. Keep it here with TexAgs Radio. Welcome back into TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We are inside the Rollo Insurance Studio. Matthew, real quick, what was your favorite part of that segment with your brother?
The Rutgers love, honestly. Because, I mean, like, I don't know how many people that listen to the show watch Rutgers football or, like, Big Ten West football, but, like, if you want to breathe, like, hard-nosed, gritty football, like, CD watches more of that brand of football than anyone I know. So just hearing him talk about Rutgers and Nebraska was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was fun to have both of you on. We love showing love to the Dawsons. A really knowledgeable football family. Like, when I think of Midwest football families, first thought is always the Dawsons.
Well, I appreciate that.
Absolutely. We're going to go back out to the Boss Firearms hotline. Boss Firearms, your local experts. They buy used guns, ammo, and accessories. Go to bossfirearms.com to start earning money like a boss today. We've shown love to the Big Ten, but there's other power conferences out there. We're going to start off talking ACC football with our guy, Jason Piacelli from ROC Boys Football. Great content on Twitter and YouTube. Jason, how are you doing today?
Oh, Jason, you're muted? You on, bud? Oh, we're having issues right now.
Yeah, all good. Hey, but I see the Michigan. I see the Michigan jacket.
He's a Michigan guy.
That's awesome.
He graduated there with his brother. So him and his brother also do. But his brother is like a finance guy, so he just does on the side. But Jason does that full time. So.
Full time, all in on the brand. Nick, just let me know when we have him. We can go out to the Angry Elephant News and Social Center for a quick text message that Callie has.
Yeah, we got a message from Jim in Temple, and he was saying that he thinks the Texas A&M football team overall is being slept on nationally. He mentioned a couple players, Cyrus Allen, Noah Moose, and a few tight ends that we brought in. And while I completely agree, I think we often talk about how we're ranked high in the preseason, and then we kind of slip off or we don't finish as high as we were ranked to start, and we get frustrated with those preseason rankings and attention that we always get. So I kind of enjoy the fact that no one's really talking about us. It kind of gives us a chance to kind of come out of the woodworks and work our way up slowly and finish higher than we normally do.
Yeah, I completely agree. A&M historically, you would rather A&M be under the radar and receive that hype later and that praise later. I'm of the same mindset that they're just going to come in and work, and whatever praise comes to them will come to them. And I think Mike Elko and his team feel the same way. So we're going to go back out to the Boss Firearms hotline to talk with Jason from ROC Boys Football. How are you doing, Jason?
Good. Appreciate you guys having me. Sorry about the technical difficulties.
You're all good. Hey, love the Michigan jacket as we've been talking about. I am a Michigan fan at heart. That was my first team, but now I'm all in on A&M. But good to appreciate a little block M when you see it.
Well, I mean, at the national championship, I mean, you got to be happy with that as a Michigan fan. But Jason, we're here to talk about ACC football with you today, and maybe a little Big 12 later. But you ready for that?
100%.
All right. Well, so first, you can't talk about the ACC without talking about conference realignment. Okay, and you're getting three teams in the Atlantic Coast Conference that are all west of the Mississippi. Didn't know if I was ever going to save that in my entire life, but California, Stanford, SMU. Right? So how can you see maybe the landscape of the ACC changing, if at all, with some of these teams being added?
Well, I mean, you look at the ACC, I don't think any of us know what the future is going to look like in 5 years. I don't even know if we'll have a conference in 5 years in the ACC, but adding those schools, I mean, as a Wake Forest fan myself, I like to see some new schools added. I think SMU is a really intriguing team to be added. You talk about a team that I think can come in and immediately kind of rearrange the pecking order in that conference. That's probably the team that I'm looking at as kind of making some moves there.
Absolutely. And we'll hit on SMU a little bit later. We're definitely on that SMU hype train as well, with 3 new teams coming in and just the uncertainty of the conference as a whole. You've got your top schools, those schools that have been historic ACC schools. There's rumblings of them wanting out. There's lawsuits. There's a lot of legal issues going on with the likes of Clemson and Florida State. What are the storylines heading into this season in the ACC? Is it those new teams coming in or those existing teams looking for a way out?
I think it's the existing teams looking for a way out. I mean, you look at what the ACC means to most college football fans. You think of Clemson, you think of Florida State. And so, yes, I'm intrigued by the new teams coming in, but you talk about the big draws to the ACC conference. It is teams like Clemson and Florida State. And if they are no longer in the ACC in the next 5 years, I mean, that significantly changes what that conference is going to be.
Absolutely. I want to go back to the SMU point right now, and I want to talk about like what that head coaching job means now that it's a Power 5 school, right? I mean, before, if you were to ask me, hey, if Dave Aranda gets canned this next year at Baylor, like, does Rhett Lashley have a legitimate chance at Baylor? I'd be like, oh, 1,000%, 100%. But now, like, is SMU like in a position where like it is just as good of, if not a better job than the head coaching job at Baylor right now?
Better job than Baylor, 100%.
Agreed.
I mean, if you were asking me what head coaching job I wanted, the resources now being in a power conference, I'm taking SMU job all day.
Yeah, I mean, and then the recruiting battles. I mean, you're still in battles with those teams in Texas, but in terms of the ACC, like, you're the only team in the ACC from Texas, right? So
100%.
I mean, there's only, what was that, 3 teams, I guess, west of the Mississippi in the ACC. But like, I think you got a great position there. I 1,000% agree.
You talk about, I mean, I think we all saw that headline about the amount of money that they're raising within the athletic program. But I think you make a really good point on the recruiting trail. I mean, SMU is, I kind of see them very similar to UCF, jumping to that power level. I know in the Big 12, but you look at a talent-rich state like Texas now being a power conference, the only one in the ACC. I mean, the talent acquisition there for Rhett Lashley, it's certainly there. I think you can win a lot of recruiting battles, and I wouldn't be surprised in the next couple of years you're looking at SMU being one of the more talented programs in the ACC.
Yeah, SMU seems like a sleeping giant that has just been waiting to explode, and that move to the ACC certainly might have done it. It almost reminds me of Texas A&M being the first Texas team in the SEC. The recruiting advantage that gave them, you would see that translate to SMU, and especially in Dallas. When you look at talent in Texas, there's big city talent, Houston and Dallas. Those guys who are playing big public school 6A, 5A football. SMU is going to have the pick of the litter in Dallas now when you look at what is going to draw you to the Power 5 level as a recruit. Power 4 now, excuse me. SMU is going to benefit greatly from that. Outside of SMU, what teams are you watching to make that big jump? We always talk about, it's looking like Florida State, Clemson, Miami are the front runners this year. Louisville has kind of been making that run recently with their head coaching hires. If you had to pick a team that's outside of that big 3 to make a run and potentially win the ACC, who would you look at?
Yeah, we've been talking about that a bunch. I'll give you 3 teams that I think are kind of on that outside tier. You talked about the 3 kind of leaders in this conference heading into 2024. I think NC State is a fascinating program. I trust Dave Doran just about as much as any coach in the country in terms of maximizing the talent on the roster. And then you look at that NC State team heading into 2024, I think it's the most talented team that Dave Doran has had during his tenure at NC State. This is a team that consistently wins 8-9 games with the most talented team that he's had. I think NC State is a team that can do some damage.
You can argue, let me add to that. You can argue that the coaching staff that he has around him there at NC State is one of, if not the best in, like Tony Gibson there, defensive coordinator, one of the most underrated defensive coordinators in college football. Then you got Robert Anai there, who has benefited from mobile quarterbacks. You're bringing Grayson McCall there. I mean, there's some definite smoke there to be had.
I think that, you talk about what makes a great coach, and Dave Doran obviously is a great coach. I think a large part of it's hiring a coaching staff. And Dave Doran's been able to keep Tony Gibson at NC State for as long as he's had it. You're right. Dave Doran has compiled a phenomenal coaching staff. And you kind of said it. Death taxes NC State having a solid defense under Tony Gibson. Like, we know that defense is going to be really solid. I look at this NC State offense and you say, all right, Grayson McCall's been one of the most productive quarterbacks that we've seen in college football the last couple of years. Casey Concepcion, that is one of the more dynamic kids going into year 2. Noah Rogers coming to the portal. They had no talent outside of Concepcion last year. It was Kevin Concepcion or bust on that offensive side of the football. You look at 2024, upgrade at quarterback, at least in my mind, with Grayson McCall. Ton of talent on the offensive side of the football now through the portal. Yeah, that's a team that I think fires me up heading into 2024.
Absolutely. We've been talking about it a little bit on the show about how this new college football playoff format, the 12-team format, is going to impact conferences like the ACC, where there's so much battle every single week. where sometimes you fall victim of your top teams eating each other alive. And in some years where, one loss would keep you out of the playoffs, now you can go on the road and lose a tough game and still get into the playoffs. So how does that going to affect the ACC? And if you had to put, let's say, a line at 2.5, are you taking the over or the under on ACC teams to make the playoff?
That's a really good question. I hate to say it, but I'd probably say under, just because of how good the Big Ten and SEC are. I think, and we saw last year with the College Football Playoff Committee keeping out Florida State. Like, if there are Big Ten teams, and I think it has a lot more to do with the SEC and Big Ten than the ACC. Like, I am a believer in a lot of these ACC teams, but you look at Penn State and how easy of a schedule they have. I don't think they win the Big Ten, but they might be only a one-loss team. And so I think Penn State with 2 losses probably gets over an ACC team with 1 or 2 losses, because we've seen the College Football Playoff Committee kind of value those conferences. So I'd say under, but I don't think that accurately reflects how high I am on the ACC in general, especially those top 6 teams that we just talked about.
Yeah, well, you mentioned you had 2 other teams that you were kind of looking out for in that tier 1. Are those going to be Florida State and Clemson?
Well, yeah. So I got Florida State, Clemson, and Miami as that upper tier, and then NC State, and then I like Virginia Tech and Louisville as that kind of those 3 teams that if things fall the right way, they win some big games, they stay healthy down the stretch. Those are some 3 teams that I think could wind up in an ACC championship game, kind of similar to what we saw Louisville do in the 2023
Let me ask you about Virginia Tech again, okay? Because last year they were like a game away from making the ACC championship game, right? And now that roster wasn't complete, right? But Brent Pry's been doing a good job over there. I mean, the reality is they might have some talent on offense, a ton of returning production, and a schedule that is so favorable. They get Clemson, that's their toughest game of all year, and they get them at home. So what are the chances as a team that was plus 1,200 to win the ACC, that was plus 2,000 just a couple months ago, back in May? Where do you what are their actual chances to make the ACC championship and the college football playoffs?
Extremely dangerous. And you mentioned it, one, favorable schedule. And I always say, don't let Virginia Tech get hot at home. That is one of the hardest places to go on the road and win football games. And I think you said it best. One, Brent Pry going into year 3, I think we all believe in where this program is going. And then you look at the talent on Virginia Tech. I mean, Connor Jones is one of the more talented quarterbacks, not only in the ACC, but in the country. If he puts it together in 2024, you have a quarterback that can win you a lot of football games. You return a sneaky wide receiver room that kind of dealt with some injuries last year. And then the defense has a lot of NFL talent, especially in that secondary. So I look at Virginia Tech, say, one, I love the returning production metric in this era of college football where so many teams seem like they're just revolving doors in the transfer portal. Very rarely do you get to just run it back with the same team, kind of like Michigan did in 2023, quite frankly. And we saw how that played out. I think Virginia Tech's going to have that opportunity where so many teams have so many new faces because they're using the transfer portal. Virginia Tech's sitting there and saying this team got hot towards the end of 2023. They're just rolling it over going into year 3 with Brent Pry. That is a team that I don't know if they have the firepower to win the ACC, but I think that you're kind of right. I think they could get to the ACC championship and be a team that's dangerous in 2024.
Yeah, you'd have to be crazy to not get fired up or not have goosebumps just thinking about Enter Sandman, a full lane stadium. Yes. When that team is on, that is a impossible place to go in and win. You've been talking about teams that you're high on. Who's a team where you look at that projected win total line and you just think, I don't like the schedule. Things may not break their way. Who's a team that you may be a little bit lower on?
I hate to say this because I graduated there, but Wake Forest. I think Wake Forest caught, obviously Sam Hartman played some really good football for them. I know probably a lot more about Wake Forest than most just because I went there. They had they really benefited from that COVID year. That's a team that never really recruits at an extremely high level. It's a developmental program. Dave Clawson does a phenomenal job doing that. The couple seasons where you saw them kind of spike, they had guys who were 6th, 7th year guys. I think one example, an 8th year guy, a kid that I was a freshman with, and I'm an old kid now. So it's you look at Wake Forest, they had a lot of success kind of 1 or 2 years post-COVID, because they had a lot of guys with that extra year of eligibility to use. Now that those guys are kind of getting cycled out of the program. And on top of that, a lot of Wake Forest top players kind of got poached in the transfer portal. I mean, I hate to say it, if you talk a team that is probably trending down, it's probably going to be Wake Forest.
Well, let me ask you this too. Like Mitch Griffiths, a guy that the staff was so high on, right? Backing up Sam Hartman, and he'd played some good. He'd played pretty well, leading up in the season, and just didn't perform. He's at, I believe, Marshall now, and y'all bring in Hank Bachmeier from Louisiana Tech, who I don't know that he's better than Mitch Griffiths. Can you confirm that, or do you like that quarter? Do you like Hank Bachmeier?
No, I mean, I'm not. I don't dislike him. I don't know if he's going to be winning a ton of football games for Wake Forest. I think Wake was you mentioned it. I don't think they were really expecting him to hit the transfer portal. And so I think they had to go out and get a veteran quarterback that they trusted. I don't think he's going to be a guy that's winning them 6-7 games in the ACC this year. So I guess short answer, probably not that much of an upgrade from Mitch.
And it's so disappointing because that receiver room is actually pretty good. I mean, you lose Jamal Banks, right? He goes to Nebraska. On the last segment, we talked about that a little bit. But, I mean, Donovan Green, who was hurt all last year, Taylor Morin over there, who's a veteran, I think is pretty good. I mean, don't you think it's kind of a bummer that this wide receiver group is
Donovan
talented?
Green can play. Donovan Green is one of the more talented players Wake Forest has had since I've been following that team. And he just hasn't been able to stay healthy. I think you're right. There's some talent around the quarterback, specifically in that pass catcher room. I just don't know. Again, like you look at the offensive line, they benefited from. You looked at that offensive line the year they went to the ACC championship game. I don't think there was a guy younger than a fourth year kid starting. It was 4th, 5th, 6th year guys. And now with those guys getting cycled out, I mean, the line of scrimmage play, I don't think is going to be great for Wake. And yeah, I think they have some talented wide receivers, but from an overall roster standpoint, I have a hard time seeing them compete even at that mid-tier of the ACC here.
Yeah, just one more question on the ACC before we hit a break and switch over to the Big 12. For someone who doesn't watch ACC football that often and, struggles to keep up with the transfer portal and stars coming in and out, there are mainstays that have been at programs for a while like Restrepo, Concepcion. Who are some playmakers in the ACC that fans may not know about, but they're going to know about once the tape turns on?
You mentioned Xavier Restrepo. I think he's one of the best wide receivers that you see in the country. He doesn't necessarily look like that prototypical wide receiver one. You talk about a guy that just separates, catches everything thrown his way, and an ideal quarterback for Cam Ward. I mean, this is the kind of wide receiver that Cam Ward liked to go to at Washington State. He's certainly one. To go to Florida State, Patrick Payton, I don't think a lot of people are talking about him. He's a guy that probably could be a top 50 NFL draft pick if he puts it together going into I believe that's going to be his senior year. Kind of sliding down the list. You look at Clemson, Peter Woods and TJ Parker on the defensive line. Those are two guys that are absolutely going to be, I mean, they're both of them only going into their sophomore years. They were phenomenal as true freshmen. There are some high-end guys in the ACC, especially when you start talking about those top 3 teams, Miami, Florida State, Clemson.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that breakdown of the ACC. We're going to be back talking Big 12 football with you. We've got a couple things we want to hit. You're listening to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Welcome back into another intro of great bumper music.
They're on fire.
Let's hope the segment is equally as good. Absolutely on fire over there at the Zone. You are listening to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We are inside the Rollo Insurance Studio, and we are back with our guy, Jason from ROC Boys Football. And this time we're switching over to the Big 12, the ever-changing conference. You've got teams going in, you've got teams going out, and there's a lot to discuss there. They just had their Big 12 Media Days, so we want to get Jason's thoughts on what's going down in that conference. Jason, first of all, what storylines came out of Big 12 Media Days that you want to talk about? And we kind of mentioned it earlier, the Deion Sanders. Anytime he speaks, he's must-see TV. But what were you looking for at that Media Days?
Yeah, a couple things that probably stood out to me outside of the Oklahoma State conversation with Mike Gundy. I thought it was interesting. Shadur Sanders, I think, gets up there, says Colorado's every team Super Bowl, which got a lot of flack according to the media. You almost kind of got to agree with it, though. I mean, you look at every program that plays Colorado on their schedule, you know they have that game circled. And it's not necessarily because they're the best team in college football, but it's because they attract the most eyeballs in college football right now. It's a polarizing program, but it gets a lot of people talking about the sport. And I think as college football fans, all three of us are, that's always a good thing.
Yeah, I do agree with that to some degree. I do think Nebraska, that's their premier out-of-conference game, I believe, and they got to go to Lincoln, so definitely some momentum there. I think Nebraska's early on season schedule is pretty favorable to them as well, so that's like a kind of a must-win game for them, if you will. Well, let's talk about realignment in general on talking about Big 12 Media Days. Well, you got some new teams in there, Utah, Colorado, Arizona State, that realignment, and I kind of like the Big 12's realignment more than I like the ACCs and the Big Tens, because you kind of keep some geographical regionality and you introduce new rivalries or old rivalries, right? Like BYU and Utah, which are huge rivalries and they haven't played in so long, feels like, in Texas Tech, Arizona as well. So what are your thoughts on some of the realignment here in the Big 12?
I think they crushed it. You talk about like a realignment that made sense. The new Big 12 is awesome. Like, as a college football fan, you're going to see a lot of good college football games every single Saturday. I'm kind of with you. You look at the ACC and look at Stanford in the ACC, and it just makes you scratch your head. I look at the new Big 12 and say, this conference makes a lot of sense. And I think you're absolutely right. You look at a Utah-BYU rivalry that's going to be back. I think the Big 12 did a really good job. I think they were dealt a tough hand, obviously, with Texas, Oklahoma leaving. But I think there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on this conference, not necessarily because you have a team that can go out and win a national championship, but you talk about every single Saturday, good college football games going into the fourth quarter. That's going to be the Big 12 this year.
Absolutely. We've got a clip. I know you've probably seen it, but for our audience who hasn't, there's a clip of Cam Rising being interviewed by some BYU Sports Network. And we want to play that clip and then get your thoughts on it.
I just don't really like BYU.
Jeez, Cam, this is normal. This is normal.
I feel like I'm definitely the red part of Utah that is the good side, I'd say. But
I don't know why people have a problem with that. Like, it's okay for you to say that.
That's what makes it great.
Yeah. I don't like seeing the Y anywhere. I don't really care for it. Yeah, it's definitely a rivalry.
Which is awesome, given the fact that you haven't experienced playing us yet, right?
Yeah,
like
but I was on the sidelines that last game, so
right.
I kind of got the sense of it.
You got a little bit of a flavor of it, right? But I mean, that game, always meant something. But now that the fact that we're all in a conference again, right, means that much more.
The Holy War is one of the best rivalries in college football. You've got BYU and Utah. That game means something again. So I wanted to ask you, with the Red River rivalry, no longer in existence. No longer in existence in the Big 12. Bedlam no longer a thing. Is the Holy War now the best rivalry in the Big 12?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, there are some intriguing rivalries, but I mean, you kind of saw with the clip with Cam Rising, like, even though they weren't necessarily playing each other every single year, there is still that rivalry aspect to that football game. And I think for the Big 12, you're probably looking at the premier rivalry in the conference moving forward.
All right, well, let me ask you this. I think the Big 12 in general is unique because of the way that they retain coaches in the Big 12. Like, very specific. Like, you look at, in just the last 3 years, the Big 10 has had 11 new coaches come in. The SEC has had 8. And the Big 12, I mean, of course you include the new ones, but if you don't include the new ones, it's only like 3. So, to me, like, the coaching retention there is pretty unique. However, with the power grab that there is without Texas and Oklahoma, like, do expectations raise a little bit? You know, Kyle Whittingham's maybe going to retire pretty soon. Like, are we going to see, like, more coaching flips, like, in the Big 12? Like, is that going to be a thing?
Yeah, you go back to just this year's cycle. I think that's a really good point that I've never really thought of. I mean, Lance Leipold, Chris Kleiman, they were getting a lot of buzz for a lot of different programs, and they both chose to stay at Kansas State and Kansas. Mike Gundy's been at Stillwater for, I don't know the exact years, but a very long time. Yeah, I think that's a fascinating point. The Big 12 does keep a lot of their coaches, and maybe that's kind of speaks to a little bit of the consistency that you see with a lot of the programs in the Big 12. I mean, you keep a coach for 10 plus years, you get kind of that consistent performance in culture. Yeah, that's a phenomenal point that I haven't really thought of.
Maybe it's just reasonable expectations, right, over there in that conference. In the SEC, I like to point to, like, Kentucky. You know, they pay him $9 million a year to win, 6-7 games, make a bowl game, but that's the expectation there, right? Like, so I think maybe in the Big 12, that's where the expectation's at. However, like, with this changing landscape, all of a sudden expectations are through the roof because everyone has a chance to win the Big 12 and everyone has a chance to recruit at the highest level. You look at Texas Tech's recruiting at that level. You mentioned UCF. UCF is recruiting at a top 3 level in the Big 12. Like, other teams can do it too.
Yeah, reasonable expectations is not a very common thing in college football, but in the Big 12, maybe you're right. There has been a little bit more of reasonable expectations for a lot of those programs. That could be an explanation for why you've seen just coaches staying at the Big 12 for extended periods of time.
Absolutely. We brought this up on our show earlier this week. Teams moving to new conferences that have the best chance to win it. We talked about it with Oregon in the Big 10 just a couple segments ago. The obvious answer here is Utah. What do you need to see from Utah and Cam Rising, a guy who's been at Utah longer than some of us have even been in school? What does Utah need to do to really solidify their spot at the top of the Big 12 this season?
I know it sounds cliche, but stay healthy. I mean, you look at the amount of injuries that program endured in 2023 and still won a lot of football games. You talk about, like, the consistency of Kyle Whittingham. I mean, he was winning football games with guys in his 2 and 3D pretty consistently in 2023. I've kind of said it all offseason. If this team stays healthy, you get the Cam Rising that we saw before the injury. It's at least my pick to win the Big 12. And Kyle Whittingham, if he has that talent that stays healthy, he's going to maximize it. Kind of like we just talked about with Dave Doran. Kyle Whittingham's a coach that he does not squander opportunities when he has good football teams. He's got a good football team in 2024. I think arguably the best team in the Big 12. Now you just got to stay healthy and kind of make it happen.
All right, so do you have any, let's say, teams that are overvalued, maybe undervalued, like you had mentioned before in the ACC, teams that you like, maybe don't like as much as the national media or Vegas is telling you?
Yeah, Oklahoma State is I think, a little overvalued. You go back to last year, they were really good at home, but it was inconsistent at times. They got hot down the stretch. I look at Mike Gundy and Oklahoma State with how many good quarterbacks that you have in the Big 12. I don't know if Alan Bowman's that guy. So I look at the Big 12 and say, what are they, third in odds to win the conference? That's not a team that I'm buying stock in. That seems like a lot of the national media is certainly buying a lot of stock in.
Awesome. Well, hey, I love your content over there. You post a ton of Texas A&M stuff over there at ROC Boys Football, including yesterday. You had your positional rankings out there. I love what you did over there. Defensive tackle, or defensive line, obviously is number 1, but I think it's a toss-up for a lot of those other positions. So I really like what you're doing over there, man. So anyone who's listening should definitely check them out.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me on. The Texas A&M fans, they always show a ton of love. We appreciate you guys and appreciate you having us on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jason. That's Jason Piacelli from ROC Boys Football. Make sure to check him out on YouTube and Twitter. That was on the Boss Firearms Hotline. We're going to bring back the next segment. We're going to play. Brawny did a really great interview with Braden Montgomery, and MLB Draft is coming up. We'll get his thoughts on that later. But for now, next segment, after we come back from the break, you're going to get a little taste of Braden recapping his time at Texas A&M, very thankful for the A&M fans. And so we're going to play some of that interview when we come back, but make sure to keep it here with TexAgs Radio, brought to you by David Gardner's Jewelers. Welcome back into TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We are inside the Rollo Insurance Studio. One more time, thank you so much to Jason and Chris for joining us, breaking down the other Power 4 conferences in the country. We want to, take a look across the landscape of college football. Everything is relevant this time of year with media days, conference realignment, and the new CFB format. So thank you again to those guests for joining us. But right now, we want to hear an interview from Brawny and Braden Montgomery, talking about his time at Texas A&M and something that I think a lot of people will be really thankful to hear.
All right, what's up, everybody? Another episode of Texas Aggies United. On TexAgs, we are sponsored by the 12th Man Foundation. I'm Ryan Brauninger, sitting in our studio in College Station. I'm on Zoom today with, I'm going to say it now, Aggie legend Braden Montgomery as he gets ready for the Major League Baseball draft coming up here this weekend. Braden, thanks, man, for joining us today. I know it's been crazy hectic with your schedule, meeting with pro teams and everything like that. But let's start with this. It's been just such a whirlwind of the last couple of weeks for all you guys that were on this roster last year. Have you gotten a time to kind of sit back now and process your time at Texas A&M and what it's meant to you?
Yeah, I've kind of started that process a little bit. I think I'll probably do more of that after this weekend's over with, and I really start that transition period. But I've sat back and thought about it a little bit and thought about the guys and kind of what this group has meant to me. And it's just, I just smile every time I sit there like that, and it's special. And it's crazy to think that the team could be just as good next year, looking at what they're doing in the portal. So it's awesome.
So as you're viewing this whole coaching transition, and you get the news that it's Mike Early is getting the head job, what was your initial reaction to Mike getting this promotion and running the program?
I was super excited because I knew what that meant. I knew that the guys are coming back, because that was the biggest thing for me, is just having the guys that I was there with. Like, it's having all those guys go back and knowing that it's not going to be a whole new coaching staff. Like, as soon as we get back off a national championship run, and I'm expecting to have all these guys to come back to, because I enjoy spending time with them, and I see that the whole staff is gone. I was like, wow, like that makes it tough. But seeing that he came back and brought everybody back together, it's awesome.
Did you so from your perspective as a hitting guy and a guy, in the outfield, and Mike being your outfield coach as well, what are some of the things that you noticed about him that you thought would make him a good head coach at Texas A&M?
Yeah, he doesn't have to jump on everybody to get him to do either what he's trying to get across or just what he thinks best. He has his way of coming across while keeping the guys loose. And I mean, that might have been kind of a thing that he was able to do better with the group we had last year, because that's just kind of how the group personality was. But yeah, that's how he was able to go about it. He's not going to be in your face and yelling at you. He's working with guys that care, and so that makes it easier as well. But yeah, he's always able to get his point across.
When a lot of the guys were talking about Mike, they always talk about, man, it's evident that he cares about us. Was there ever an interaction between you two, maybe early when you got to College Station, that made you think, man, this Coach Early guy, he really cares about me as a human being?
I'd say just in my everyday interactions and how it was bigger than baseball, and it was always just fun exchanges with him. Like I'd sit there and chop it up with our coaches all the time. Like during practices, I'd probably talk to our coaches just as much as I'd talk to the players, and I'd always take my time to talk to him and Foxy and go up to their offices or whatever. Just because I liked having that type of bond with the coaching staff, and so yeah, it was always bigger than baseball.
And you have made, in what was it, 9-10 months in College Station, feels like a lifetime of memories for you and your family. Is there one moment from this season while you were on the field that really sticks out, or is there too many to name? Like, have you even gotten a chance to think about, man, this is the one moment that at Texas A&M that I will remember forever?
I haven't thought about it a lot, but I'd say up there is definitely the Targo walk-off.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, that one's up there for sure.
What about the Grand Slam against Georgia?
That was cool. That was really cool. That was really cool. But I don't know. I guess I don't think about that one as much as I might think about the Target walk-off. That was special. So
yeah, and that was a team moment, and I think that's so cool that you reference somebody else's moment as your favorite memory from this season. When I asked you this during the season, but when you came to Texas A&M, there was some type of expectation, and you said, "Look, it's been blown out of the water." So now, when you go into pro ball, how much of a proponent will you be? A recruiter for Texas A&M is like, hey, like any of you guys thinking about transferring or you're looking for your next home, whether it be out of high school or college. I know you have a lot of ties to Stanford and you love that place. So it seems like, if those guys from maybe the West Coast or where you're from in Mississippi are looking for places, you're going to give them two options now.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Because as you brought up, I love both places, but man, Bluebell Park is special. And so guys are going to want to play in that. And I don't blame them. That's the peak of college baseball. And it's an unreal experience. So guys are going to rightfully want to play at Bluebell. And if they don't, then I don't know.
Well, going forward, what is so your family is in Tomball, North Houston now. What is have you thought about your plans for where you're going to off season? Will it be in North Houston? Are you planning on coming back to College Station and off season in here with Mike? I know there's a lot to go on between now and then, but have you given any thought about where you kind of want to settle?
Yeah, in the off season, I'll probably be spending a lot of time in that Tomball area. My longtime hitting coach that I've been working with is right there in Tomball. But since that's just an hour down the road, then I'll definitely be making my way down here. So, well, I'm going to make it happen.
Of all the guys you played with this past season, is there one guy maybe on the roster that you're looking forward to watching next season? We know Gavin and Jace, right? But, like, is there any guy that you're like, man, he's about to take off and go to a whole nother level just based on what you saw this year?
I'm looking forward to watching Sorrell.
Yeah.
Sorrell was kind of how I imagined I looked my freshman year. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does, the strides he takes. I'm expecting he's gonna slow the game down a little bit more with more game time experience, and he's gonna be able to command that strike zone a little better. So I'm looking forward to what he does.
All right, so take me through a typical week in Braden Montgomery's life right now. How are the meetings go? Like, how often are you sitting down with pro clubs? When do you get to? I guess let's start with this. Cancel all that. How do you feel? How's your foot feel?
Yeah, I'm feeling good. Everything's healing up really nicely. Doctor said they're seeing some early bone formation in there, so everything's going really well, even maybe a little bit ahead of schedule. But yeah, everything's feeling good. Foot's feeling normal. I'm still in the boot though, but I'm able to take that off when I'm not doing anything. So just sitting around the house, I'm chilling. Meetings haven't been too much. It's something that doesn't really start up until the week before, and so I've just knocked out a couple and got a couple more. And so it's also not too much. Like, it's not like you meet with every single team. It's more, I guess, geared to where closer to decisions, I guess. But yeah, it hadn't been too stressful. Just been living life, playing some video games since I can't really walk.
When do you get back?
Yeah.
Like, when do you have a timeline on when you can start swinging, maybe throwing, anything like that?
Yeah, so I have another checkup in 2 weeks, and that'll be when I'll start walking on my boot and doing rehab and moving my foot all around, and that's when things really start to speed up. And then as soon as my incisions close up all the way, I'll start getting in the pool, doing whatever I can to just get moving, get everything going back to normal. But I think I'll be able to throw probably as soon as I start walking, and then I'll be able to hit in probably another month and a half.
So I don't know if you've realized this, but the gif of you from the dugout in Omaha where you're pounding the top, you're pounding the pad and screaming, like, that has become ubiquitous among A&M fans. Like, every time something good happens now for Coach Early, my mentions get
crazy.
flooded with that. Like, have you seen it? How cool is that?
I haven't seen that at all. That's hilarious.
Well, you're probably going to get it tweeted at you 1,000 times now, but yeah, like,
that's sick.
Again, man, like, I hope you take the time once all this draft stuff happens and you get some downtime. I know you're going through a rehab, but like, I hope you get some time to go through some of this stuff, because the mentions, whether it be through your mom's mentions or yours, man, these folks here in College Station are super appreciative for what you did. And I guess we'll end with this. Is there any kind of like, do you have a message for the 12th man as you kind of get ready for the next chapter in your life?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've heard a little bit about my mom's Twitter popping off and her gaining her fandom and everything, and so I've heard a little bit about it, and I'm super appreciative of all the support that 12th man's given. It's become especially seen, I guess, after the season has ended, and all the nice words and kind messages, and I couldn't be thankful enough for everything that the 12th man's provided this whole season, this whole year. And ever since I touched down in Aggieland, it's been awesome. I've enjoyed every moment of it, and it's special. So I'll be back, and I'll see you guys soon.
Yeah, I hope we see you around the ballpark as much as you're available to come around the ballpark. And I'll say this, man, getting to watch you play has been a joy of mine as an analyst and as a guy that covers the team. I hope I get to watch you for 20 more years playing this game that you love on TV. But, man, thank you for all your availability to us here at TexAgs, and we wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
That's former Texas A&M outfielder, now MLB Draft expectee early in the first round, Braden Montgomery. Again, thank you for your time on Texas Aggies United here on TexAgs.
That was Braden Montgomery. Very well done interview by Ryan Brauninger. We're going to get to your text messages on the other side of this break. That's 979-693-1150. You're listening to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Welcome back into TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We are inside the Rollo Insurance Studio. Luke Evangelist, Matthew Dawson. You know, it's been a fun show so far. We really appreciate all of our fans on YouTube who are hyping us up. You know, good morning, Matt Dog, the Dawson Evangelist Show. Woo, Figurine Champ, our biggest fan. He said, don't forget to smash the like button. There's like almost 150 people watching. If we could get 150 likes, that would be awesome. Because if not, Billy, David, Brawny, OB, all of them are going to lock us in the back, and they're never going to let us do this again. So please smash that like button.
Y'all should have seen all of the hate comments I had to delete.
Oh, yeah.
I've been hard at work just getting rid of them.
Well, look, if we let Brawny and those guys take over, I mean, talk about asylum. I mean, prison break.
Yeah, you're about to have probably the main prisoner. Like, if there was a red notice of TexAgs people to watch out for, it's Brawny. If you didn't get your fix of Brawny from that Braden Montgomery interview, lucky for you, we are about to have back-to-back segments with none other than Mr. Ryan Brauninger. We're talking A&M baseball, A&M football, recruiting, maybe a little bit of NCAA 25. Brawny, we just found out, was playing the original games. That's how old he is. Yes, he is the oldest person we're going to have on our show today. That's Ryan Brauninger.
That's crazy.
Just in his 30s, so it's a young show today. But thank you so much for listening so far. Make sure to keep it right here with TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. another banger. Emily at the Zone, you're absolutely killing the bumper music today. Welcome back into TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers inside the Rollo Insurance Studio. We are joined by none other than Mr. Ryan Brauninger. For today, he is Gramps because he is the oldest person on the show, not OB. Welcome in, Ryan.
It reminds me a little bit of our trip to Omaha, where I was by far the oldest guy on the trip at 37 years old. So I was like the funkle. I was the fun uncle. But, and then this week, I filled in for OB, I filled in for David, and now I'm filling in for Billy. So it's good to have a versatile backup, that can play every position, much like Michael Early's doing.
Right.
How about that segue?
I was about to say, you're like, if we had to put a transfer on you, you're like the Jamal George of the infield.
Hey, I like that.
Yeah,
I don't speak as good as Spanish as he does, but I'm working on it.
You're right.
Yo estoy tratando. I'm trying.
Oh.
But I don't use it enough. So maybe David could help. Maybe we could put that's a job we could give David when he comes back. Well, I guess SEC Media Days he will be busy there. But I think that Anderson Garcia interview that he did in Spanish was cool. I think he'd be cool if he had done one with Jamal George.
Yeah, I would love to see that. So
I'm a little bit distracted, by the way. How old is this laptop?
It's like hissing and buzzing at me. It's only like 5 years old.
It sounds like it's about to take off.
No, it's a bomb. It is legitimately a bomb.
That thing, it's like a black suitcase. I
know, and I've been in here. I've been inside there cleaning out the fans and
dude, this thing it's crazy. I'm sure they can. I don't know if they can hear that on air, but it is loud.
I was worried about it. I'm like over there. I'm always sitting like it's like 15 feet away, and I'm like, can they hear that from over here?
Did
like
you buy that new?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know if they sell used laptop. I mean, somebody might have had it, but has some questionable USB drives in it or something like that.
I know. Well, maybe
get something from Lynn Waxman or something like that.
Well, I bought it up north, so maybe it's just hot Texas summers.
It might be. It might be.
So, who knows?
How's the show been? I haven't listened to 1 ounce of it.
Oh, you've been missing a lot of quality content. We actually, believe it or not, there is another Dawson out there that loves ball just as much as Matthew. He's got a brother, Chris, who we talked about. He was our Big Ten expert. And we had Jason from ROC Boys Football talking Big 12 and ACC.
How old are these individuals?
They're college grads.
Yeah, Jason, I think is like 27, 26, and then CD is 21.
Wow, so I really am.
You are like.
I need to make sure that I don't have any gray coming through my beard. I got to hold on to this youth as long as I can. My wife thinks it looks distinguished when I start getting gray in my beard, but I'm still trying to hold on to every ounce of youth I've got.
You definitely do a good job of staying young. For those of you who don't have the privilege of being around Brawny every day, when I first met Brawny, I'm like, oh, he's probably like 28, 29. Because
I appreciate that.
He looks very good for his age, but also he keeps up with like the young kid lingo better than anybody.
I have to though, right? Because of both of my jobs, whether I'm dealing with my 12 baseball kids, which I'm around them more than the football kids, but when I go to games on Thursday and Friday nights in Houston, like the pregame playlist is full of mostly rap music that is of y'all's generation. And like every now and then I'll catch one that I'm like, hey, I like that. So I'll just Siri, who sings this? And I'll add it to my playlist. So between that and then, keeping my 12 kids keep me up to date. Like I didn't know what a John was. So I have one of my kids that uses that word all the time. So now they just help me piece things together when dealing with the youth of our office.
What would you say is like the most interesting piece of lingo you've heard that you would say is weird or just on par for
and also, I'll tell you who else has got a lot of like TikTok bits is Katie Smith.
Absolutely.
So, whenever she says like occur or purr. Yeah, like those kind of things threw me off at first, and I had to or good morning. That's her and Allie's thing.
Yeah.
So it was Nick. We don't need your commentary screaming through the wall here. Nick is a 73-year-old man in a 27-year-old, 26-year-old body.
It's been like this all show.
Has it really?
Yeah. No, I mean kind of. But like.
Yeah, he's kind of. Well, here's a good word. I love Nick, and Nick is a hard worker. Nick does a fantastic job. He is kind of the straw that stirs the drink on this radio show, and anybody really that's producing. But Nick does the yeoman's work of it, no question. And the best thing about Nick is you can call Nick at any time, whether it be on the weekend, late at night, during the week, and, hey, man, we need somebody up here in the studio. We got breaking news. We need to film something. He'll drop everything and come do it. If for anybody listening that's a young professional like y'all are trying to break into the industry, that is an incredibly valuable trait to have, right? Yeah. Saying, I can be there. And that and the figure it out trait. Like those are the two. I'll show up and I'll figure it out. Those are the two most important traits, I think, of becoming valuable to a company. And Nick has those in spades. All that said, Nick is crotchety for a young man. Like he's got Olin Buchanan traits in a young man's body.
If you took like your quippiness, wittiness, and put it with Nick, that would be OB to me right there. That would be a perfect match.
Hold on. Okay.
Because you're quick-witted.
Hold on. But I've got more of a filter than Olin.
Do you?
Oh, yeah. Olin lets it fly, dude. You know that there's a difference. Not once have I ever lifted my leg to put it on that rail that stairs out there and stretched while wearing shorts and carrying on a conversation with people in the lobby. Here's a quote for you guys that y'all. That's crazy. That's wild. That's crazy. Y'all say that's crazy all the time, right?
I mean, crazy is a common word.
Right, I know, but like that's kind of a new thing, though. That's crazy. Like 20-year-olds hosting a radio show, it's crazy. But Olin legitimately stretching out in front of it's like he's doing a, what do they call it? Whenever like a rehab assignment.
Yeah.
Like he's rehabbing some kind of surgery he had in the lobby. It's like just stretching out, talking ball. That's OB.
Yeah, it's crazy though. Like the used coffee filter that he uses as a filter between air times, he takes it off and it is.
Hold on, what?
Like you're talking about like the filter that he uses, like when he's talking on air. Like
I thought you were talking about legit coffee filter upstairs.
No. I'm talking about the filter that he is using for his vocabulary.
He uses one?
Well, it's a used coffee filter. That's what I'm saying.
Oh.
And it doesn't really do anything, but then he takes it off on air, and it's it's something special.
That's why there is some validity to us potentially having an XM radio show at some point. That I just don't know if you can even some of the stuff you can't get away with on XM, but it's a little bit more open and things can fly. But I think I'll tell you what I'm looking forward to here at work is like that new studio is looking pretty good. They had the TVs turned on the other day, and I got to see it with the TVs turned on. That's going to be sweet. So
I keep popping in there anytime I can, and they'll put up like the logo with the different backgrounds. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is awesome.
It'll be a little bit of some rebranding. We won't give away all that stuff, but we've been in this studio since I started working here.
Yeah.
And that was in 2015. So going on a decade, and it's been longer, since they moved into this building, they've been using this studio. So I know that we are excited for like a fresh look, and I think it'll give the show more dexterity. Like we can do different things. And I think it'll give us a chance to turn this into something maybe different, like maybe a sit down podcast, little studio. You see a lot of that right now, like on YouTube and stuff. Like as podcasting has become more popular, it's less people sitting in front of a microphone and more people like sitting at a desk. It's more people like sitting in comfortable chairs, holding a microphone, make it more conversational.
Yeah, you mentioned being here since 2015. A lot of changes have happened, but we wanted to ask you, you were like talking about it on Twitter about what this season for the baseball team was like and so many great moments.
Boy, he had to get me back on track, didn't he? That's
Hey,
good.
he's a good radio
Well, he is. And like I was waiting, I was like, okay, what is this? Is this going to be about like TexAgs history or what's he going? And then he goes all the way back to his
you were
baseball.
talking about on Twitter some of these moments you got to witness this season were the best you've ever seen since covering. So going back to 2015, we want to hear stories, moments covering any A&M sport that you got to witness that you're going to remember for a while is really special.
Oh, man. I was here. I just started when the Brandon Jones documentary, the safety from Nacogdoches that we filmed the documentary, he ended up going to Texas. Like that was a big deal. I can remember Tate Martell's commitment, and we flew Bryce Jones out to Las Vegas to cover that. Those were some early memories that really stuck out. The 2017 baseball team going to Houston as the 3 seed and making it all the way to Omaha when I like all those guys that were on that roster, but they had some real holes, and they just they got the right fit in the regional, and then they get the super regional against Davidson. They walk off game 1, and game 2 is essentially won by a 2-out bases loaded infield pop-up that doesn't get caught between the pitcher's mound and home plate. Scored 2 runs on that, and that was like the icing on the cake for that super regional. So those were some early days. And I guess like covering some of the commitments, Leon O'Neal's recruitment was pretty crazy. Damon Demas's recruitment was pretty crazy. That 2022 recruiting class, like that was the most fun I'd had covering recruiting, but it was also like the most hectic. covering my favorite recruit of all time in terms of like what on the field, Devon A-Chain, like getting to go watch that kid play and kind of seeing him start to gain a following in high school. Then he comes to A&M, and like what I thought that sucked about Von's first year was like he made his introduction during the COVID year, and like there was just less eyeballs on the stuff because it was so choppy and intermittent in terms of who was playing each week, how many guys were out, and I can remember Walker Lott, who was helping me cover recruiting at the time. He was my intern. He'd gone with me to see Devon a bunch in high school, and I can remember Devon scoring against Arkansas, his first touchdown, and like Walker immediately texted me. He's like, "That's what we saw for 3 years," and I was like, "Yeah, that was cool." And then so like to get to know guys and follow them throughout their careers has been really cool. And some of them, you know, through my travel baseball stuff, like Max Wright, I was first introduced to. I think he was 13 years old. Wow. So to watch his career kind of unfold, so all that kind of stuff has been cool. But yeah, this baseball season, this one in the 2022 baseball season. Are full of just incredible moments. And, you know, those 2015 and 2016 teams were also just like right up there in terms of special moments and special players and special teams, special plays, special players. See, I'm catching on, right?
Yeah, you are.
I don't know how much we can talk about that guy this week. He had some interesting things happen. Regardless, so – But I think this 2024 season like surpassed them all in terms of just things that stick out. Like you'll never forget some of those games and some of those swings at Bluebell Park. Like the last 3 seasons, and you can give Jim Schlossnagle has had a lot to do with this, and I know it's not a popular thing to say, but like A&M baseball's trajectory and what it is in popularity right now is higher than it's ever been. And you know. That changed whenever he got here, but these players this year took it to a whole nother. Like Jace Lavalette is a superstar in college baseball, and he's like everywhere he goes in College Station now, everybody knows Jace. Whereas I feel like even super good players in the last decade, Braden Shoemake, incredible player here. You know, perhaps the greatest shortstop that A&M's ever had. That's up for debate, but he's in the discussion. When he was playing, there'd be people that knew who he was, but was he a national superstar like – you know, in college baseball, like Jace or Gavin or Braden were?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. Just from a student being on campus and being involved on social media and seeing the influence that these athletes have, you look at a guy like Hayden Schott, who wise beyond his years, but also super funny and really great at baseball. It seems like with this new age of social media and athletes being on social media a lot, A&M specifically, there are a lot of athletes who rally the 12th man, have a lot of great fan support. I think of Henry Coleman, Torian York, who are super outspoken on Twitter about how much they love Texas A&M. And, you know, I don't know if you see that really at any other school where these guys are so adamant about getting fans to their games and being one with the student body.
I'm sure there is, but we don't see it because we don't cover those other schools. You know, I had somebody in that running baseball portal thread, which you've done a great job with, by the way, both of you guys chiming in on that thread.
Mostly Luke.
But, you know, had somebody ask me about, you know, Texas had some kids leave their class. What is this? What does that mean? How were they processed, or was it the kid's choice to leave? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't cover them. Again, I've got so much on my plate that I certainly don't have time to be going and digging in on why kids are leaving a certain school or what the reasons are behind that. But it's because we're so locked in on A&M that perhaps we don't see it from at other schools, not nearly as much, right? Like, I don't know if Nebraska players feel that way and that they shout out their fan base all the time. I don't know Florida the same way. Like, we don't cover those schools. But no, what I do think that A&M has gotten a much bigger spotlight over the last 12 months is when you go back to the Jimbo firing, the Stoops thing, and then Elko being here. And people forget that Mike Elko went on a transfer portal run, much like Mike Early has done. Like in his first month on the job, it was pretty crazy covering that transfer portal window once Elko got here. But you look at the storylines that emanated from this baseball season and just kind of how popular that team got. And, you know, when you talked about the injuries, like they were popular amongst the fan base, but they went down as legends, like even more so than the 2022 team, which, you know, they were pace setters. They laid the groundwork for 2024. But like once the national media got a hold of some of these A&M stories, then you saw, you know, Jace robbing the home run and then playing through the hamstring in Omaha when he was clearly hobbled. And the Caden Kent story, and they kept showing his dad and like all this stuff. And so like these kids have never been more popular. And I'm not just talking about Aggie baseball. I think all the sports on campus, like Wade Taylor's a superstar in college basketball. Yeah. I think everybody's super intrigued about Nick Scorton and Connor Wigman on the football team. And I think A&M's kind of flying under the radar. They're not flying under the radar. Just people don't know about A&M football right now. Like they don't know what to expect under Mike Elko. But yeah, I think it's got to be a really fun time to be a student at Texas A&M, or right freshly graduated, because like all this stuff is getting so much run nationally on social media, on sports talk shows, that kind of thing. Since I've been covering Texas A&M, the only time that's come close was that 2022 recruiting class, and then the Jimbo Nick Saban fallout. Like that was the most attention I'd seen on A&M until this moment right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, NIL, you got to think also like building a brand benefits people a lot. I think like the video game we were talking about earlier, EA College Football 25, and we want to hear your thoughts on it as well. But like things like that, like also have a big impact on like just growing the game, like in terms of the youth. Mm-hmm. So I think building a brand in general just benefits people.
Well, when I was in junior college, there was an NCAA baseball game.
Really?
It was like 2005, 2000. Well, it had been 2006, 7, and like metal bats and the whole thing. And there wasn't a bunch of stadiums, but like it was obviously very popular amongst college baseball players at the time. And the rosters weren't super accurate, but the big schools had guys that mimicked the rosters that were at the big schools. And so I think you're right. The college football game is going to reignite a younger fan base for the sport. No questions asked. I know we're up against a break. I mean, I played NCAA college football like on the original PlayStation. Like and it was a big deal. Like, I think when I was growing up, we were kind of the last feral group generation, meaning like we were outside a ton, right? Because we didn't have phones. And I was the last generation, I feel like, that graduated high school without internet on my cell phone, where I couldn't just go to my iPhone or whatever and look up something on the internet. Like you want to go look up something on the internet, you had to go to the library and get on the computer and that kind of thing. But one of the things that we did start doing when I was young teen, mid-teen was like when we weren't outside doing stuff, we were playing NCAA football on the PlayStation or NCAA college baseball. And that kind of graduated into Halo and all those kind of things as I got into college. But like that was a big deal. And like we talked about it at school. Like we'd have tournaments and we'd make brackets, we'd draw them out with pencil and paper. We draw out brackets for the weekend. We'd all go stay at somebody's house and we play NCAA college football, and we would do brackets like that.
Yeah, I cannot wait for that to make a comeback. Like you said, we're up against a break. But on the other side, we'll talk a little bit more NCAA college football. We'll talk some MLB draft, and, we'll just have a great time. We've got another segment of Brawny, and we're always thankful.
I can stay as long as y'all need me.
Yeah. Well, we've got Around Aggieland, and then we've got one final segment.
Tell you that
special
he
thing.
Need you.
Good. I'm glad.
Your value to us is much needed, but realistically, after
you have a full show.
Yeah,
full barn.
About to say, we can check the schedule, but the barn is full, and the schedule is just absolutely jam-packed. So, yeah, like we said, we're up against a break. When we come back, more Ryan Brauninger. You're listening to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Welcome back into TexAgs.
Speaking of crotchety young people.
Okay.
Where does Richard Zane fall on this list?
Richard is high for sure.
Oh, yeah. Like he's permanently angry.
Yeah. I'm afraid of what he's going to do.
The Dodgers they're hurt and they're not playing well. So like he walks in a bad mood.
Well, yesterday I didn't remind him that it was Paul Skeens Day, and he was like, I cannot believe that you didn't remind me that it was Paul Skeens Day. He threw like a 7-inning like gem or whatever, and he was like,
hey, can I rub somebody's back?
What?
Real quick?
Yeah.
Olin Buchanan, look, man, we revere you. You're venerated, and we respect you so much that we pick fun at you on the radio. Yeah. I don't mean all those things. Here's what happens here. Okay, so it's top-down organization, right? There may be somebody that sits at the top that likes to embellish stories. So when I get on here and I start telling stories, especially when I'm sitting, in his hour on Friday, maybe my stories get a little bit embellished about OB. So I didn't want to make a caricature out of him. He did have like a problem where he was having to stretch in the lobby one day, and I've turned it into like he does it all the time. So OB, I know you're listening. Love you, buddy. And also, I'll tell you this about OB. He's been all in on baseball, just like everybody else has been. And he's been like wanting to, like, he's like, hey, give me like ideas for articles. So he's trying to help out with the baseball coverage, recruiting coverage. So yeah, he's not just been kind of writing his own deals. Like he's been coming to people like for story ideas and, wanting to help us increase our coverage of recruiting and baseball.
Well, he does have plenty of short jokes for me, so I always have to stay strapped regardless. So
he does or
no, OB does.
Oh, okay.
So I got to stay strapped.
Oh, he'll dish him.
Yeah,
he'll dish him.
But he knows he could take it.
Yes, for sure.
Hey,
listen, he's an old White Oak roughneck. Like he's an East Texas boy. He's thick skin.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask you this because I've been getting confused lately, and I want to see if you have too. With the rise of Bronny James, making it to the NBA, do you often get confused? Because anytime I hear the name Bronny, my first thought is you. And anytime my friends are talking about, did you see that Bronny highlight? I'm like, what? I'm going to your Twitter. What did Ryan Brauninger say?
Well, you should probably put that up to a vote on Twitter because I feel like the only edge that I will ever have on Bronny James in anything is notoriety amongst people in the College Station community. That's it. When those people hear Bronny, do they think? And I think Bronny James would probably still have an advantage there. Mm-hmm. But it's the only chance that I have. But I appreciate that. That's very kind of you. No problem. Is weird to hear it because I've had different nicknames everywhere I've lived. So I've lived in 4 different places. Nederland, Texas, where everybody called me Rhino, and they still do to this day. Family, friends, everybody from down there. When I played junior college ball at Hill, it's the only time I've ever been called Ryan. The only time. I got morphed into somehow DJ at McNeese when I was living in Lake Charles. All of my buddies that I played with there, everybody, they call me Deej or DJ. There's a story behind that. We don't need to get into the weeds of that right now, though.
Right.
And then when I moved here was the first time anybody had ever called me Bronny, and it's kind of stuck.
Who gave you that nickname?
Bronny? I don't know. It was – I can't even tell you, man. Like, I don't know where it started. I like it. It's been good for me personally. Like, I thought about starting – because everybody, like, you get everybody wanting to give you business ideas. Like, man, you should start a Bronny LLC just in case you need it. And that would be – it does give me ideas for stuff I wanted to do maybe outside of TexAgs or outside of 12 where, I have some opportunities to do some different things. But, yeah, it's been a cool nickname, and it's kind of stuck.
Yeah, we couldn't let you out here without hitting some MLB draft just yet. So, real quick, Braden Montgomery's the headliner. Where do you see him landing? Do you have a landing spot that you see him going to most likely?
No, I think the A's are a good bet, good value bet. I think they're at 5. Mm-hmm. I've seen him get projected to 4, all the way down to I think the Red Sox at 12. Man, if Braden Montgomery goes 12, it just feels like somebody's missing something somewhere. Yeah. But it all depends on the team, what they need in terms of their major league roster and farm system roster, what they're willing to spend, because all of these picks are valued. What is the kid willing to sign for? There's a lot of rumors right now that J.J. Weatherholt may go first overall.
Wow.
Because there's, you listen to different people talk that he would be willing to take something like $6 million as the first overall pick. Well, that's like $2 million under slot value.
Yeah.
So those teams are saving that amount of money. Like that's a value saver, and especially if you think that J.J. Weatherholt's not that. If as a scout or as an organization you think, well, we think he's really close to Travis Bazzana, like we're splitting hairs in terms of the player, or Jack Caglione or Charlie Condon. If you think they're that close and you can save $2 million on him, is that a risk that you take? And because that set you up better for your later picks. So the depth of your draft will be better because you'll get more guys to sign because you have more money. So there's a lot that goes into the Major League Baseball draft because of the values at those different picks, and then because every organization has essentially a purse of money that they can spend through the top 10 rounds, and you don't want to be wasteful with that money. And the more you can save, the more, like I said, the more it sets you up for better value later in the draft or a more aggressive pick later in the draft.
Well, let me ask you, like, you just mentioned it before, like the MLB draft is very, 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 very unique compared to like other drafts in the other professional sports. Like, what are some other things about the MLB draft that make it so unique?
Well, it's the only sport where you can draft high school players, right? And the biggest issue right now with the Major League Baseball draft, and I know why they did it, they wanted to get more eyeballs on it and make it a much bigger deal, much like the NFL and NBA drafts. But they've put it in a space of the calendar that makes it nearly impossible to manage for not only the college coaches, but the current incoming freshmen. So guys like in the A&M class, like Wyatt Sanford and Sawyer Farr and Cooper Williams and Terrence Kill Jr., they've all moved to College Station. They're here. They will be in College Station when their name gets called on draft night, or if their name gets called. So, but they have to move down here because if they don't get picked, or they don't get picked where they want to, or they don't sign, then they've got to start summer classes. So, and then it also makes it really tough on the coaches to know what your roster is going to look like going into fall ball. You know, Michael Early has absolutely killed it in the portal, but is there more work to be done? Because what happens if Gavin Cash gets popped really high? Then you got to go find another corner infielder, outfielder to replace that kind of power. So as much as they've done, especially position player wise in the portal, could there be more work to do? The coaching staff doesn't know that until the draft happens. It also makes it really tough for scholarship allocation. And, you know, right now, until baseball changes something with that, they get 11.7 scholarships, and that's it. And they've got to divvy that up across their entire roster. How difficult must that be to do when you don't know who's going to be here? And the NCAA continues to cut down on the amount of walk-ons you can have. So it's the draft, it's difficult for a non-baseball person to comprehend because there's just so many layers to it. Like we said, slot values, team need. There are certain players, Jace Lavalette had a number coming out of high school that he wanted to sign for, and he was not going to budge. There are some players that don't budge. There are some players that will budge. And if a team thinks a guy will budge and they take him and then he decides not to budge, then they've wasted that pick. There's just so much that goes into it. You know, when in the NFL, when you're drafted, I mean, outside of the very rare cases like an Eli Manning where he decided he wasn't going to play for a certain organization, when you're drafted, you're going there. Like, there's no question. MLB, there's still some negotiating to be done and some leverage to be weighed against coming back to college. And right now, you know, you can't do that in the NFL. You can't say, you know, let's say who left early. Jalen Weidemeyer couldn't have gone into the draft process and said, well, you either take me at this spot or I'm going back to school. It's like you enter the draft. Once you enter your name in the draft, you're going to the draft. Yeah. So it's just different in a lot of ways. But the number one thing they need to fix is when it happens. So it gives everybody involved with the process a much clearer picture about what their future looks like going forward, from the college baseball coaches to the college baseball teams to the kids to the high school players, the whole thing. Like they need to adjust the calendar badly.
So would you have it before the season? Because you feel like you're kind of sandwiched between August and then June.
I would like to see them have it the week between the Supers and Omaha.
Okay.
Interesting.
But they used to have it during the week while the College World Series was going on. So there was like a number of times growing up, I can remember watching the College World Series and like a guy's out there playing second base, and like while he's playing second base, he gets drafted. And so he has to come into the dugout to find out that news. And you're going to tell me that it's just human nature that while you're out there playing, you're not thinking about that. I mean, it's the most important baseball games of your life, and you have something else on your mind. I thought that was unfair to the kids. So I think the most reasonable way to do it is either have it right after the College World, like it starts that weekend after, or maybe the Monday after or I guess it would have been the Tuesday or Wednesday after the final series in Omaha, or you have it between the Super and Omaha.
Absolutely.
That's what I think.
I think that's That's spot on for sure. That timing has been throwing it off. Bronny, want to say thank you so much for joining us. Always incredible to have you on. Your insight, your humor, and just everything.
Thanks,
I'm glazing you right now as the young man.
I do know what that word means. Thank you. Not thank you. I'm gonna send that to my wife.
Absolutely. Well, do whatever you want with that clip. I'm sure. Never mind. Thank you so much, Bronny. Thanks for being on. Next segment, we're gonna get to Around Aggieland. We'll get some text messages. We'll have Callie Garner sitting here at the desk helping us out. The text message number 979-693-1150. We'll get to your text messages next segment. Keep it right here with TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Great intro music again, just absolutely killing it. I cannot wait to see what we've got for the last segment. But for right now, we are hitting Around Aggieland, presented by Normandy State Bank. Normandy State Bank, rock solid banking. Go to their website, normandystatebank.com, for more information. We've got Callie Garner joining us. This is TexAgs Radio in the Rollo Insurance Studio. Callie, Around Aggieland, take it away. What do we have going on around Aggieland?
Let's go. We've got a lot of things going on around Aggieland. We have Texas A&M third baseman Gavin Grahovac was named to first-team freshman All-American by Baseball America, which is his fourth selection, which makes him a unanimous freshman All-American, and that is the second straight year that the Aggies have had a unanimous freshman All-American, with his teammate Jace Lavalette earning the award in 2023. We have two new baseball commits, one from Rice and Benjamin Royo. I know we talked about them a little bit earlier this week on the show. He played in 49 games with a batting average of .261. He hit 13 home runs and 40 RBIs. And then Jamal George, who's an infielder from Alabama State. He played in 50 games, a batting average of .310, hit 9 home runs and 35 RBIs. So really excited to have those two join our Aggie baseball squad this next year. Texas A&M Athletics landed a school record of 101 student athletes on the 2023-2024 first-year SEC academic honor roll, which is just really impressive. It surpassed the previous year, set 17, and featured student athletes from 15 different sports, which is just really shows how wide and variety our student athletes are. And then we have Texas A&M volleyball, Afena Casapala and Logan Ludnicki, who were named to the 2024 preseason All-SEC team. And following their sophomore seasons, the pair received an All-South Region team honors, and Logan was named to the All-SEC team last year. So excited for volleyball season to start as well.
Absolutely. At the Wisconsin out-of-conference game, that's going to be a banger. You got Texas coming into the SEC. Man, I'm very excited.
Oh, yeah. We also have Saturday is the Texas A&M Day on the SEC Network. So if you don't have anything going on this weekend, just sit down and tune into your TV. They've got 4 baseball games. The men's basketball game versus Kentucky from this year, women's basketball from Arkansas, women's volleyball against Florida, softball versus South Carolina, soccer versus Tennessee, and then a spring football all access. So if you're bored on Saturday, you've got your Aggie athletics fix on the SEC Network.
That's awesome. And we'll definitely have our Aggie fix for SEC Media Days next week for sure.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. We got anything else?
We have the men's golf team that will host the 16th Aggie Invitational this next April 12th through 13th at Traditions Club, and the A&M golf team has won the event on 5 occasions in 2010, 11, 14, 21, and 22, and are looking to take the victory again in 2025.
Absolutely. You know, if it's one thing TexAgs loves, it's golf.
Absolutely.
And their golf merchandise. That logo with Sarge and the golf club is unbelievable. I think Richard has a hat of it, and I'm always jealous anytime they wear it.
For sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
I've got a Titleist one. It's like a white Titleist, and then it's Texas A&M logo on the back. It's pretty. It's not the little Sarge, but it's all right. It's good enough for me. So I'll take it out to the links and shoot a 110.
Hey, that's a good day. 110's a good day. If Hayden Schott is shooting 103, I think 110 is good for you.
I don't know. I mean, look, I try to be sub 100, but like, man, it just does not happen. It just does not happen every day.
And that's all right. That's okay.
All right. Luke is right. That is all right.
Is there anything else for Around Aggieland?
That's all we've got today.
Okay. Our audience is absolutely itching at the NCAA 25 talk. We teased it a little bit earlier in the show, but we got to go back to it because everyone's talking about it. In terms of player rankings, well, first I want to start off with a question from a texter. Says, sorry if I missed this earlier, but what team are y'all planning on using for your college football 25 dynasty rebuild other than Texas A&M? And before we get to that, I know, Nick, you can chime in as well. For whatever video games y'all used to play, if you had a team that you used to rebuild, or specifically in college football, for me in NCAA 13, it was Coastal Carolina. But I want to hear what y'all's teams you used to rebuild were, and then now what teams you're going to do on this new game.
I'll tell you, the first team that I rebuilt ever was actually North Texas.
Huh.
Believe it or not. Yeah, built that thing up from the ground up. I mean, we won, I think, 3 straight national championships. It was over. Most
Dynasty.
recently, though, NCAA 14, which, I still play every now and then. Arkansas State. Butch
Jones fan club.
Yeah. They didn't have Jalen Raynor, though, because they have, rosters that you can download. They didn't have Jalen Raynor in there, so kind of had to get crafty with that, but at the quarterback spot. But good time, man.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
That's all right. I mean, look, you can just just pick a team, you know?
Any team in the world?
Well, there's like one or two you probably shouldn't pick.
Well, yeah. You know what? I'm going to go Tulane.
Hey, there we go. They got good uniforms, too.
Yeah.
New coach in there, John Summerall.
Yeah.
They
I
got
like
some
the
talent
green wave.
there.
What about you, Nick?
To be honest, I guess I'll say that NCAA football 14, right? That was the last game they made.
Yep.
That's probably the video game that I have the most amount of time in my life put in. I really didn't play that the what's it called? Not franchise,
Dynasty?
but Dynasty. Yeah, I didn't really play that too much. I played a lot of Road to Glory.
There we go.
Yeah, I used to pick my teams really kind of based on the uniforms of the team. So, teams that I liked, but unfortunately, I'm not spending like $500-$600 on a PlayStation or whatever to play the game. It looks fun, but if I were to pick, I'd probably go like Sam Houston or something because my mom went to school there. Why not rebuild Sam?
There we go. Hey, we'll take that.
Or the CUSA, hey, there's room to build over there. So.
Yeah, the Bearcats, they're on the way up for sure. Before we get over to a topic about SEC Media Days, we want to talk about just A&M's players and their rankings. One of the things we mentioned was some player rankings, some players we thought were overrated, Arch, Shador, Travis Hunter, and then some underrated players. For Texas A&M specifically, they released the top 100. Nick Scorton was the only Aggie on that list, coming in at number 88. So in terms of Texas A&M football, if you had to pick one player that we don't know the rankings for the entire team, we can guess where some players are going to be, but we won't know A&M's full rankings for a while. If you had to guess one player who's not currently in the top 100 that you think by the end of the season or by the start of the next game, College Football 26, if you had to pick one player that would be in that top 100, who would it be?
For me?
Yeah, for everyone.
Give me, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, but I'll take Trey Zune. If the run game's good enough, I think the carries might be split enough where they might not put Ruben Owens or Lavin Moss or Amari Daniels in that top 100. But if they're running the ball, the offensive line I think is going to get some love there, and I think Trey Zune could rise to the top.
Absolutely.
I think I'll take Bryce Anderson.
Oh, that's a good one.
Absolutely. He's got some veteran status to him, and I think he can prove himself this year. So I'll take
What about
Bryce.
you, Nick?
No mention of Shamar Turner or Torian York
Oh,
yet.
that was crazy.
Don't talk about Torian.
We were
That's
letting
mine.
you take
Talk
that
about
one, Nick.
a layup, two
Yeah,
layups.
actually, I'll change mine to Shamar
No,
Turner.
can't do that.
Dang
I'll
it.
take both of them, so that leaves Luke with a real hard pick here. You got to go somebody different.
Well, can I just talk more about Torian York? Is that a crime?
Of course.
So some teams' rankings have been released. We found out that Anthony Hill for Texas is an 86 overall. So if these game makers and the ratings people have any sense about them, any truth or loyal bone in their body and doing the right thing, then Torian York will at least be an 86. True freshman All-American for him. One of the best linebackers in the SEC. If you give him another year, even if they give Torian like an 85 or 86 this year, which I think he should be an 87, but we saw A&M's team defensive ranking is 84, so I don't know how confident I am they'll give Torian a good ranking, but I have no doubt that next year Torian York will be known, not just in a video game, but in real life as one of the best players in the country and probably the top linebacker in the SEC.
Yeah, I agree. I think like 86, 87. I think like picking between that's splitting hairs a little bit, but regardless, fantastic football player. And like you said, maybe it's more than a couple that are in this top 100 this time next year.
Who's to say Terry Bussey doesn't find his way in that list?
Who's to say Des
Connor
Ricks?
Wigman, we didn't even.
Connor Wigman, we haven't even talked about. Noah Thomas. I mean, there's a lot of names in
the
there.
whole roster.
Yeah, if they did like a dance ranking, which I know it's normally just speed, agility, awareness, all that, you would think Ja'Day Walker is on 100, and that should at least carry his overall a couple. Like that,
sure.
If he's 82, like that should make him an 84 for sure.
Yeah, I hope they put his dance in the game.
Oh,
I saw they previewed the gritty. I mean, it wasn't a very good gritty on the graphics, but it was like I hope that they kind of put that in there. So that'd be sick.
Yeah. Real quick before we hit a break, actually, we'll hit a break right now, and we'll come back with more college football talk and the video game talk, and then we'll wrap it up. But for right now, we're going to hit a break so we get a little bit of a longer segment on the other side. But keep it right here. We're going to keep listening and getting to y'all's text messages. Keep listening to TexAgs Radio presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. You hear the music. It's closing time. No, we are not at Logie's on a Saturday night. We are at the Rollo Insurance Studio, TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. And it is closing time. One final segment for Luke, Matthew, Callie, Nick, the whole young gang that have been here all day. Thank you to everyone who's been listening. We've got a couple minutes left, and we want to talk and preview a little bit for SEC Media Days. 4 teams are going to be going each day, and so we've broken up those teams into their pods, and we want to talk about if you had to pick one pod to pick the best football pod, who would you pick? So there's the teams right there. Day 1, you've got LSU, Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Vanderbilt. Day 2, Georgia, Missouri, OU, Tennessee. Day 3, Alabama, Florida, Mississippi State, Texas. And then day 4, Arkansas, Texas A&M, Kentucky, and Auburn. I'll start it off if I had to pick just the best overall football pod. I think I'm going to go day 2.
For sure.
Because you've got Missouri, Tennessee, and Georgia. Do any of y'all object to that?
Absolutely not at all. I mean, you could make the argument for the Bama, Texas, Florida, Mississippi State, but I think Mississippi State kind of brings that one down a little bit. And, with Texas on their resurgence and Missouri playing well, I think it's day 2.
Yeah,
Nick, same wavelength?
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's the obvious choice, I think. Even with OU in there, I think they're going to be better than, Kentucky, Arkansas. I mean, if you look at the rest of them, Mississippi State, maybe even Auburn. So definitely day 2.
Now, if we were to make it a baseball pod, which pod are you picking? I think I'm leaning day 4.
4 for sure.
But day 1
only
is
scrub in there is Auburn.
Yeah,
and day 4.
Day 1 is the up and comers.
Are you
day 2 is brutal because you have Missouri in there. So I mean, day 3 might be what I take, or day 1. Actually, day 1 because all those teams have won a national championship in the last 15 years. So
that's a good point.
I'll take day 1.
Are we talking about overall or just this past year?
I was thinking just this past year.
Because this past year, overall, I would take day 1. This past year, I would take day 4.
Yeah,
for sure.
Overall, dude, probably take day 4.
I mean, you have
yeah, probably for basketball though. Well, I'm just going in general, not necessarily this past year. Day 4 is looking pretty sneaky.
Yeah.
Auburn, Kentucky, Arkansas, A&M.
I'd probably go day 4 as well. Now, one last topic. Football coaches that you could hang out with.
Give me day 4. Give me Sam Pittman. Are you kidding me? That guy seems like an absolute chiller. There's a picture of him out there drinking a beer on sideline or something. That's awesome.
I don't know what I would pick. I think day 1.
I think anything but day 3.
I think day 1, I think Lane Kiffin is just interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't pick day 3. I like Shane Beamer. Although day 2 would be interesting too. Eli Drinkowitz is like a dork, like you and me. I think we would enjoy hanging out with him.
Yeah, I feel like
you get Kirby Smart.
You talk some ball with him for sure.
Kirby, I mean, I don't know if I want to hang out with him or his players at the current moment.
Well, it depends. Calling an Uber, right? We're not letting his players drive us home.
Right.
So, that is a huge factor.
Yeah.
Huge.
Best logos, I think day 1. Day 1 might take it for me. Minus Vanderbilt. The Vanderbilt logo is atrocious.
I like the Florida logo a lot, but I think the Mississippi State, the M being off center, and the burnt orange is kind of throwing me off for day 3 there.
Sure.
Yep. And that's how we're gonna close it out. Thank you to everyone so much who has listened today. Thank you to David and Billy and Nick for giving us this opportunity to host. We will see y'all in a couple mananas from SEC Media Days on Monday. Thank you so much to everyone who's listening.